Eleanor Del Graves pressed her sneaker into the spongy moss that swallowed the carnival path. The faded sign above her read, "The Midway, laughs for all ages." The paint had peeled to reveal sun-bleached wood veined with black mold. Vines curled around the poles like skeletal fingers, and tattered bunting fluttered with every stale gust rolling through the abandoned grounds. Elle wiped sweat from her temple and glanced back at the group. Jonah, her twin brother with a cracked phone perpetually recording, Rosie, their childhood friend with cropped blue hair and insomnia black circles under her eyes, and Marcus, Rosie's new boyfriend with a swaggering grin and a neck tattoo of a black widow spider. "Come on," Marcus urged, his voice echoing across the cracked pavement where wildflowers sprouted through the asphalt. "Let's get this over with before sunset." He held Rosie's hand tightly, knuckles white. Rosie said nothing, eyes flicking left to right, scanning the shadows beneath the Ferris wheel where rust dripped like dried blood down its skeletal frame. Jonah aimed his camera at a carousel strangled by kudzu vines, narrating under his breath. Day 1, exploring Asheville Carnival, abandoned since 1998 after the fire that killed 6 staff members and 2 children. Local legends say, enough. Elle cut him off. The heat pressed on her chest, heavy and rancid with the smell of rotting wood and stagnant water pooled in collapsed game booths. "We're not here for your channel, Jonah." He lowered his camera, shrugging. "Then why are we here? Nostalgia?" Rosie shivered. "Because Elle had a nightmare. Again." Marcus chuckled without humor. "Nightmares don't bring 4 grown-ass adults to an abandoned carnival." He kicked a dented soda can, which clanged off into the shadows of the old cotton candy stand. The sound went on too long, as if it struck something metal deeper inside. Elle flinched. Her nightmares were not just dreams, they were memories. Disjointed flashes, a white mask with painted lips curled in a grin, a woman screaming while carousel music played backward, the scent of burnt sugar and something far worse underneath. She didn't know why she needed to come back, only that she had woken up with blood under her fingernails, her sheets twisted around her legs, and a certainty in her gut like a swallowed stone, return to the carnival. Find what's missing. Rosie clutched Elle's arm. "Let's just stay together, okay?" Jonah snorted. "We always split up in these videos. That's where the views come from." Elle spun on him, her glare flaring with a venom that silenced him. "This isn't a video. If you want to die for views, do it somewhere else." Jonah raised his palms in mock surrender, but his smile faltered. They continued past a collapsed tent, its shredded canvas rippling as if something beneath it breathed. The path opened onto the Midway proper. Faded prize booths lined the cracked asphalt, their windows shattered and stuffed animals inside black with mildew. Above them, the roller coaster tracks twisted overhead, skeletal ribs silhouetted against the sun. At the far end loomed the funhouse. Its rusting sign swayed gently in the breeze, the mirror maze of laughs, "Come see your true self." Elle's stomach clenched at the sight. The doorway yawned black and silent. Something about it called to her, as if it contained a truth too terrible to look away from. Marcus pulled out a joint, lit it with shaking hands, and took a deep drag. "Guess we're going in there first." "No," Elle said. "We start at the manager's office. We need to know what happened here before we go into that." Jonah smirked. "You're scared of mirrors now? After all your shadow work therapy bullshit?" Elle ignored him. She focused on Rosie's trembling grip. "Stay close to me." They crossed the Midway. As they passed the shooting gallery, metal ducks hung decapitated on rusted chains. A pink stuffed bear sat slumped behind the counter, its face melted into a grimace by rain and sun. Its glass button eyes watched them go by. Inside the manager's office, the ceiling tiles sagged, dripping stale water onto rotting carpets. File cabinets lay on their sides, drawers yanked open and their papers half-shredded by rodents. Elle moved to the corkboard on the far wall. Beneath curling rosters and old flyers was a yellowing photograph pinned by a rusty tack. She peeled it free and brushed away grime. It showed 8 employees in clown costumes, lined up in front of the funhouse. At the center was a tall man in a white porcelain mask painted with red curls at the lips. His eyes were black holes in the photo, no light reflecting. Something twitched in Elle's chest, like a fish caught on a hook. "That's him," she whispered. Jonah leaned in. "Who? The boss?" "No," Elle said, trembling. "The thing from my dreams." Marcus scoffed. "That's just a guy in a mask. Creepy aesthetic, but that's it." Rosie's voice cracked as she read the caption scrawled under the photo. Staff photo, August 1998. Last day of operation. Happy retirement, Mr. Silly. Jonah frowned. "Mr. Silly. Clown mascot," Elle said numbly. "He did shows at birthday parties here." Marcus ripped the photo from her hand, examining it with a snort. "Looks like a pedo clown to me." Elle's stomach roiled with nausea and rage. She snatched it back. "Don't." Something creaked above them. They froze, looking up as dust drifted from the ceiling. A muffled scraping noise came from the roof, like someone dragging their fingernails across corrugated metal. Jonah raised his camera again, whispering, "Are you getting this?" Elle shivered. The group backed out of the office, into the damp Midway twilight. The wind carried the smell of burned sugar again. Rosie gagged, covering her mouth. The sun dipped below the horizon, washing the carnival in bruised purple and funeral orange. Marcus flicked his finished joint into the grass. "Let's just do the funhouse and get the fuck out." Elle didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on the broken tilt-a-whirl, where something pale slipped behind the carriages. A flicker of white porcelain. She could almost hear it chuckle. The sun had fully sunk beneath the tree line, and the carnival drowned in shadows tinged with bruised purple. Mosquitoes whined around Elle's ears as she led the group down the cracked path toward the funhouse. Rosie clung to her arm, her breath shallow and quick. "Elle, what if this is like your dream again?" "What if it is like my dream?" Elle said. "That's why we're here." Jonah filmed their approach, the camera's small screen illuminating his face with flickering blue light. His eyes were wide with gleeful terror. "This is gold. Everyone's gonna think it's fake, but if we see that clown again..." "Shut up," Marcus snapped. He walked ahead, shouldering through cobwebs that hung like tattered curtains. The funhouse door loomed before them. Flaking white paint around a cartoonish grin, its teeth streaked with black mold. Jonah moved to film closer. "Look at this. Like it's rotting from the mouth out." Elle touched the door's rusted handle. It was ice cold despite the humid night. For a moment she saw herself reflected in its chipped chrome, her face pallid, eyes sunken, hair hanging in limp ropes. For just a blink, her reflection smiled back at her though her own mouth remained closed. She yanked her hand away. Marcus laughed nervously. "You see your evil twin or something?" "Just open it," Elle whispered. He shrugged and pulled. The hinges shrieked like a dying animal. The smell that poured out was cloyingly sweet, like cotton candy melted over rot and curdled milk. Rosie gagged behind her. Jonah switched his camera's light on, illuminating the funhouse interior. Mirrors lined both walls, warped and stained with mildew. Some mirrors were shattered, leaving jagged edges that gleamed like fangs. The floor beneath their feet was black and white checkered linoleum, curling at the corners, crawling with silverfish and centipedes that skittered away from the light. Marcus whistled low. "This place is fucked." "Stay together," Elle ordered. She moved forward, feeling the damp floor flex slightly under her weight. As they walked deeper, the mirrors multiplied. Each reflected their group in distorted fragments. Jonah's face stretched into an eel-mouthed grin, Rosie's eyes black and bulging like a drowned corpse, Marcus's skin peeling back to expose crawling masses beneath, Elle herself, pale and skeletal, her teeth long and thin like insect mandibles. She shivered, fighting the urge to close her eyes. They reached an intersection where the path split into 3 mirrored corridors. Jonah panned his camera to each one. "Well, choose your doom." Rosie whimpered, clutching Elle's arm tighter. "Don't let go of me, please." Marcus rolled his eyes. "It's a mirror maze, Rosie. There's no doom, just more dead ends." He moved to the left path. The mirrors there were less warped, their silvering almost completely flaked away, leaving dark glass that reflected them faintly. Elle's chest tightened. "Don't." He ignored her and stepped inside. "Marcus, stop," but the mirrors flickered with a sudden ripple of movement. Elle blinked. For a moment, instead of Marcus's reflection, she saw Mr. Silly standing there, his white porcelain mask cracked at the forehead, his painted grin curling wider and wider until it nearly split his face in half. Marcus stumbled back out, laughing shakily. "Okay, that was fucked up. It's like it was someone else in there." Rosie sobbed. "Can we please leave?" "Elle, please." Elle turned to Jonah, who was filming her with an intensity that felt invasive. "Stop recording." "No way," he said, his voice trembling with adrenaline. "This is the best footage I've ever." "Stop recording," she screamed. Her voice echoed through the funhouse, rattling the mirrors until the glass trembled in their frames. Jonah jumped, fumbling his camera. It clattered to the floor, skidding against a mirror and coming to rest tilted upward. The camera's light still shone, illuminating the ceiling, where a dark patch spread outward from the center like an oil stain, pulsating slowly, dripping thick droplets of black tar onto the floor. Marcus gaped. "What the fuck?" Elle felt bile rise in her throat. She stepped forward and picked up the camera. The stain above them contracted and released, like a massive inhalation. The air thickened with the smell of spoiled sugar. Rosie whimpered. Elle, it's him, he's in the walls." Elle turned to her friend. "What did you say?" Rosie's pupils were blown wide. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "He's in the walls, he's inside everything here. I saw him. When you screamed. I saw his eyes behind the mirrors." Jonah snatched back his camera, breathing hard. "This is insane. We need to go deeper. Imagine the views." "Imagine, shut up." Elle snarled. Her voice cracked, ragged with terror and rage. "This isn't about your goddamn views, Jonah. Something is wrong here. Something is alive here." She turned to Marcus, who stood trembling, his usual bravado gone. "Get Rosie out. Take her back to the car. Wait for us." "What about you?" he whispered. Elle clenched her jaw. "I need to find him." Marcus hesitated, then nodded and gently pulled Rosie toward the entrance. Rosie sobbed Elle's name over and over until their footsteps faded down the corridor. Jonah turned to Elle. You're not leaving me out of this. She sighed, exhausted and terrified. Then stay behind me. They moved deeper into the funhouse. The mirrors became more warped, their surfaces rippling like black water. In some reflections, Elle could see herself walking with Jonah. In others, she was alone. In a few, Mr. Silly walked behind her, head cocked at an impossible angle, his grin vibrating with silent laughter. They emerged into a domed chamber at the center of the funhouse. The walls were lined with floor-to-ceiling mirrors that curved inward slightly, like the interior of an oyster shell. At the center of the room was a broken stage, its once glittering floor now dulled and buckled by moisture. A rusted PA speaker hung from the ceiling by frayed wires. As Elle stepped into the room, it crackled to life with a burst of static. Then came a voice. Sweet and lilting, like an ice cream truck jingle. Welcome back, little Elle. Jonah whimpered beside her, raising his camera with shaking hands. The mirrors rippled as if a breeze passed through them. From each reflection, Mr. Silly stepped forward. His porcelain mask was cracked along the left cheek, revealing something wet and pink beneath. His eyes were bottomless voids that devoured the light. I missed you, he crooned from every direction at once. We have so much fun to finish. Elle's knees buckled as memories surged through her, the birthday party. The fire. The smell of melting balloons and scorched flesh. His hand on her face, forcing her to look into the mirror as he whispered, see your true self, little Elle. Let it out. Let it out. She screamed. The mirrors trembled with the force of it, and the room shook as if the carnival itself laughed along with Mr. Silly. And through her scream, she heard his voice, gentle and mocking, welcome home. Elle couldn't move. Mr. Silly stood in every mirror at once, surrounding her with that unblinking porcelain gaze. His cracked mask revealed pulsing pink meat beneath, veins twitching with each tiny movement. Jonah whimpered beside her, filming despite his trembling hands. Holy shit. Elle, what is that? Mr. Silly tilted his head in every reflection, the painted grin widening beyond the limits of bone. His voice poured from the rusted speaker above, sweet and sing-song, it's your birthday, little Elle. Don't you want to play your favorite game? The air thickened with the smell of burnt sugar and mildew. Elle's vision blurred at the edges as memories clawed through her mind, dragging her back to that day. She was 8 years old, standing in the funhouse in her pink ruffled dress. Her mother and father stood by the entrance, their smiles strained, exhaustion lining their eyes. Behind them, the carnival staff in clown costumes set up folding chairs and a cake shaped like a carousel. And there was Mr. Silly. He towered over the other clowns, his white porcelain mask painted with spiraling red curls at the cheeks and a massive crescent grin. He carried a balloon bouquet in one hand, each balloon shaped like a smiling face with bulging eyes. They bobbed in the humid air as he approached her. Happy birthday, Elle, he whispered, his voice sticky and syrupy, dripping down her spine like spoiled honey. He knelt before her, his mask inches from her face. She saw herself reflected in those black glass eyes, her small form trembling, her hands clutching her dress. Are you ready for your special game? He asked. She shook her head. Her stomach was tight with dread. Something in his smell, the burnt sugar over rotting meat, made her want to scream. But her mother said sharply, Elle, don't be rude. Say yes. Elle forced a smile and whispered, yes. Mr. Silly clapped his gloved hands together. Then follow me, little star. He led her through the funhouse, past the warped mirrors where her reflection stretched and rippled. The other children giggled as they passed, their voices echoing unnaturally. Finally, they reached this room, the mirrored dome. Mr. Silly turned to the children, bowing deeply. Today's game is Mirror Mirror. Who wants to go first? A boy with bowl-cut hair stepped forward eagerly. Mr. Silly beckoned him into the center of the room and whispered something in his ear. The boy giggled. Elle watched as Mr. Silly placed his hands on the boy's shoulders, facing him toward a mirror. The boy laughed again, until the laughter cut off in a wet choking sound. Mr. Silly's reflection in the mirror moved differently from the real clown. The mirrored version opened its porcelain mouth impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged black teeth, and bit down on the boy's head. Blood sprayed across the mirror. The real boy collapsed to the ground, twitching, his skull caved inward as if invisible jaws had crushed it. The other children screamed. Mr. Silly straightened, turning to Elle, tilting his head. She remembered him whispering, "Don't worry, little star. Your turn is last. I want to save the best for last." Elle snapped back to the present with a strangled gasp, bile burning her throat. She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Jonah's camera caught everything. His breathing was ragged. Elle, what the fuck is this? Mr. Silly laughed in every mirror, the sound layered into a chorus of cracked bells. The mirrors rippled, and each reflection stepped forward, as if about to climb through the glass. Let's finish your birthday party, Elle. You were such a special little girl. Jonah screamed, backing away, his camera swinging wildly. One of the reflections lunged forward, slamming its cracked mask against the glass. A spiderweb of fractures spread outward, leaking thick black ichor onto the floor. Elle scrambled to her feet, grabbing Jonah's wrist. Run! Run! They fled down the mirrored corridor, reflections warping around them. In some mirrors, they saw Mr. Silly following, his limbs bending at unnatural angles. In others, Elle saw herself, but her reflection wore Mr. Silly's mask, and her dress was soaked in blood up to the collar. They burst into the main corridor. The smell of rot and old sugar clung to their skin. Jonah sobbed, clutching his camera like a talisman. What the hell was that? He gasped. What did he do to those kids? Elle shook her head, bile rising in her chest. He fed on us. Through the mirrors. I don't know how. I don't, a scream cut through the carnival. Rosie. Elle sprinted out of the funhouse, Jonah stumbling after her. The carnival night was alive with whispering shadows and the distant rusted squeal of the Ferris wheel as it shifted in the breeze. They followed the sound to the tilt-a-whirl. Rosie sat in the dirt, clutching her knees to her chest, rocking back and forth. Marcus stood behind her, his hands limp at his sides, staring blankly at nothing. Elle skidded to a stop beside her friend. Rosie. What happened? Rosie didn't look up. Her eyes were wide and glassy. He's here. He's everywhere. He showed me what's coming. Marcus spoke in a flat, empty voice. We're all going to die here. Elle grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. Snap out of it, Marcus. Snap out of it. His eyes flickered to her face, and for a moment, they were pitch black, like Mr. Silly's. He smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was wide and cracked, his lips splitting at the corners to reveal bloody teeth beneath. Then he collapsed forward into the dirt, unconscious. Jonah retched behind them, vomiting bile onto the moss-choked asphalt. Rosie finally looked at Elle, tears streaming down her face. We can't leave. He won't let us. He's part of the carnival. He's in the rides. The mirrors. The ground. Everything here feeds him. Elle's vision blurred with tears. She clenched her fists until her nails drew blood. There has to be a way to stop him. Rosie shook her head violently. You don't understand. You can't stop him. You brought us here. He wanted you to come back. Jonah stumbled forward, wiping his mouth with a trembling hand. Why, Elle? Why does he want you? Elle closed her eyes, trembling. Memories clawed up her throat like worms. Because I'm the only one who ever survived. The words tasted like blood and ash. Rosie sobbed harder, rocking back and forth. Jonah turned his camera to Elle, his eyes hollow. What do we do? He whispered. Elle opened her eyes, filled with dread. Her gaze turned back to the funhouse, where Mr. Silly's faint laughter still echoed from within. We finish what he started. Elle crouched beside Marcus's limp form, feeling for a pulse. His skin was clammy and cold, but his heart still thudded faintly beneath her fingers. Rosie sobbed behind her, rocking back and forth, whispering nonsense words under her breath. He sees, he's laughing, he's always laughing. Jonah kept filming despite his ashen face, his camera light flickering across Marcus's slack features. Stop recording, Elle snapped without looking at him. Jonah ignored her, whispering to himself. People need to see this. They need to know what's here. They need to know. Put it down, Jonah. He flinched at the steel in her voice. Slowly, he lowered the camera to his side, though his finger remained curled around the record button. Elle stood, wiping sweat and tears from her face. The humid night pressed down on them, thick with the smell of rotting cotton candy and burnt grease. Somewhere deeper in the carnival, the rusted Ferris will let out a long, shrieking groan as it shifted in the breeze. Rosie's rocking slowed, her breath hitching in quiet sobs. We can't leave, he won't let us leave. Elle crouched and grabbed her shoulders. Look at me, Rosie. Rosie's red-rimmed eyes lifted to hers, pupils blown wide with terror. We are not going to die here. Do you hear me? Rosie shook her head violently. You don't understand. I saw what he is. He's not human. He's not even a ghost. He's hunger. He's teeth. He's older than this place. Older than anything. Elle's stomach twisted, but she forced her voice to remain calm. Then we find where he's anchored. Where he's feeding from. We cut him off. Jonah let out a strangled laugh. Cut him off. Did you see him? Did you see what he did to Marcus? To the mirrors? He's a fucking demon, Elle. You can't just kill him with a lighter and some holy water. Elle turned to him, her eyes cold and hollow. I'm not talking about holy water. She looked back at the funhouse looming in the darkness, its entrance yawning wide like a jaw frozen in mid-scream. The faintest sound of warped carnival music drifted from within, warped and slowed to an insectal buzz. We're going to the carousel, she said. Rosie shivered. Why there? Because it's the oldest structure here. The carnival was built around it. If he's anchored anywhere, it's there. Jonah swallowed hard, wiping sweat from his upper lip. And what if you're wrong? Elle met his gaze, her voice flat. Then we die screaming. She stood and helped Rosie to her feet. Marcus groaned, eyelids fluttering. His lips moved, forming a single word, run. Elle ignored it. She slipped her arms under his shoulders, hoisting him upright with Jonah's help. Together they half carried, half dragged him down the cracked asphalt path toward the carousel at the far end of the Midway. The painted horses loomed in the moonlight, their chipped enamel eyes staring blankly. Vines coiled around their legs like serpents. The roof of the carousel sagged inward, rain-rotted wood exposing rusted gears and pulleys above. They laid Marcus against a toppled ticket booth. Rosie sank beside him, stroking his cheek with trembling fingers. Jonah filmed the carousel slowly, his voice shaking as he narrated. The Asheville Carnival Carousel was built in 1923, originally steam-powered. The central pillar was carved from a single oak tree felled from the surrounding forest, and, stop. Elle's voice cracked with exhaustion. Just, stop. She stepped onto the carousel platform. The wood creaked beneath her weight. Moonlight glinted off the horses' painted teeth, too many teeth, she realized. Far too many. The mouths gaped wider than any horse's should, each lined with multiple rows of tiny white triangles, like shark jaws sculpted in secret. Her stomach turned as she moved toward the central pillar. Faded paintings of cherubs and laughing clowns circled its base. Their eyes had been scratched out at some point, leaving dark gouges in the paint. One of the gouges dripped a slow trickle of thick black liquid, oozing down the wooden column to pool at its base. Jonah stepped onto the carousel behind her, camera light illuminating the ruined ride. What the hell is that? Elle crouched, dipping her fingers into the black ooze. It was warm and sticky, clinging to her skin like sap. She brought it to her nose and gagged. The smell was sweet, rotten, and faintly metallic, like burnt sugar mixed with blood and sewage. He's feeding here, she whispered. Feeding on what? Jonah asked, his voice breaking. She stood, wiping her hand on her jeans. On us. On memory. On fear. On everything we bring with us. The air around them vibrated with a low hum, like distant machinery straining against rusted gears. The horses began to twitch in place, their heads jerking as if straining against invisible reins. Their glass eyes rolled back, revealing only veined yellow sclera. Rosie screamed from the ground. Marcus let out a groan of pain, curling in on himself. Jonah panned his camera across the carousel. Elle, what do we do? She moved to the control panel, flipping open the rusted metal casing. The interior was a tangle of gnawed wires and roach carcasses. A massive knife switch jutted upward from the center. Help me, she said. Jonah approached, swallowing hard. What are you doing? I'm starting it. His eyes widened. Why the fuck would you do that? She gripped the knife switch with both hands. Because he's awake. And if he's awake, we have to wake everything up. Force him out. Force him to show us where he's anchored. Before Jonah could protest, she yanked the switch downward. The carousel lurched with a screech of tortured metal. The horses jerked in place, their two wide mouths gaping as the platform shuddered into motion. The warped calliope music wheezed from hidden speakers, slowed and reversed, filling the night with a chorus of choking laughter. The mirrors around the ride flickered. Mr. Silly appeared in each reflection, his porcelain mask splitting down the center to reveal a gaping black maw lined with countless needle teeth. Jonah screamed, stumbling back off the carousel platform. Rosie sobbed, clutching Marcus's limp body. Elle clung to the central pillar as the ride spun faster and faster, the horses bucking and jerking as if trying to tear themselves free. The black ooze poured down the pillar in torrents now, pooling around her shoes, steaming in the moonlight. Mr. Silly's voice boomed from every direction, layered and monstrous. You're mine, little Elle. You've always been mine. The ride spun faster, the world blurring around her. Elle screamed back into the darkness, her voice ragged with terror and fury. show me where you are. Show me what you are. For a moment, everything went silent. The carousel froze mid-spin, the horses frozen mid-buck. The mirrors flickered, and she saw something new reflected in every surface. Beneath the funhouse. Beneath the ground. A vast cavern lined with teeth and eyes. A pulsing mass of writhing pink and black flesh, half rooted into the earth, half sunken into the carnival's rotted foundations. And from its center, 100 umbilical cords stretched up through the ground, each ending in a porcelain mask, each mask smiling with identical red-painted grins. Jonah sobbed behind her. What is that, what is that? Elle turned to him, her face pale and resolute. That's where he lives. The carousel groaned, the music warped into a roar of laughter as Mr. Silly's voice echoed from every mirror, "Come home, little star." The carousel ground to a shrieking halt, the horses frozen mid-buck, their mouths agape in eternal screams. The mirrors around the ride flickered and went dark, leaving only the shallow moonlight to illuminate the rusting ride. Elle staggered off the platform, her legs shaking. Jonah sat on the cracked asphalt nearby, camera hanging limply from his hand, his eyes wide and unfocused. Rosie sobbed beside Marcus, who lay curled on the ground, twitching with feverish spasms. His skin gleamed with sweat, and blood dripped from his nose onto the moss-choked pavement. Elle crouched beside Rosie, touching her shoulder gently. "Rosie. Listen to me. I saw where he is." Rosie's tears streamed down her face. You went into the mirrors. I saw you. You became him." Elle shook her head, fighting the nausea rising in her throat. "No. I saw what's beneath the carnival. Where he's rooted. Where he feeds." Jonah coughed behind them, bile rising in his throat. That thing, it's alive under us. All this time." Elle nodded slowly. "It's in the earth. Like a fungus or a tumor. This carnival, it's just the fruiting body. The mask it wears." Rosie's sobs turned into quiet laughter. "We can't fight that. We can't fight something that isn't even real." Elle grabbed her by the chin, forcing Rosie to look into her eyes. "Listen to me. It is real. And it can be killed. Everything that feeds can starve." Rosie's eyes searched hers, desperate for any flicker of hope. "How?" Elle stood, her knees creaking. She turned her gaze toward the funhouse, looming at the far end of the midway like a bloated, grinning corpse. Its entrance gaped wide, shadows shifting inside as if breathing. "We go down," she said. Jonah let out a strangled laugh. "Down? Into that? Are you insane?" Elle turned to him, her eyes hollow and cold. "Do you want to die up here, picked apart piece by piece? Or do you want to end this?" He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. Slowly, he nodded, wiping tears from his face with trembling hands. Elle crouched beside Marcus, whose eyes fluttered half open. His lips moved weakly. "He's inside me. Elle. I can feel him." She stroked his hair gently. "Stay here. Rest. We'll come back for you." But he shook his head violently, blood spraying from his nose. No, don't leave me here. "Please." Rosie grabbed his hand, squeezing it tight. "You're coming with us. We're not leaving anyone behind." Jonah groaned, pushing himself to his feet. "How the hell are we supposed to carry him underground?" Elle scanned the carnival grounds, her eyes falling on an old wheelbarrow tipped onto its side near the cotton candy stand. Its metal basin was rusted through in places, but the frame looked intact. She grabbed it and rolled it back to the group, flipping it upright. "Help me." Together they hoisted Marcus into the wheelbarrow. He let out a pained grunt, curling inward like a wounded animal. Rosie stroked his hair, whispering soothing nonsense as Elle began pushing the squealing wheelbarrow down the cracked path toward the funhouse. The entrance loomed before them, shadows shifting inside. The warped carnival music still echoed faintly from within, reversed and slowed to an insectal hum. Jonah hesitated at the doorway, his camera light flickering across the peeling paint and mold-blackened cartoon faces. "Are we really doing this?" Elle didn't answer. She stepped into the darkness. Inside, the mirrors flickered with faint phosphorescent light, casting fractured shadows across the warped corridors. The smell of mildew and rotting sugar thickened with every step, clinging to their skin and hair like a greasy film. Marcus whimpered from the wheelbarrow. He's laughing at us." Rosie squeezed his hand. "Ignore him. Stay with me. Stay here." Jonah walked behind Elle, camera pressed to his chest like a shield. "Where's the entrance to, wherever the hell he is?" Elle moved deeper into the funhouse, past the mirrored dome where Mr. Silly's laughter still echoed faintly from the warped speakers. She paused at the far end, where a maintenance door stood half-rotted on its hinges, a faded "employees only" sign dangling from one screw. She pushed it open with her foot. Inside, a steep metal staircase descended into darkness. The smell that wafted up from below was suffocating: sour earth, rotting wood, and something else beneath it all, the sticky sweet stench of decomposing flesh. Jonah gagged, covering his mouth. "Jesus Christ," Elle turned to Rosie. "Help me with Marcus. We're going down." Together they lifted him from the wheelbarrow, propping him between them. His feet dragged across the rusted metal stairs as they descended into the darkness. Jonah followed, his camera light illuminating mold-choked brick walls and rusted pipes dripping with black slime. The further down they went, the warmer the air became, thick with moisture and buzzing with unseen flies. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a cavernous maintenance tunnel. The walls were lined with rotting wooden support beams, their surfaces crawling with white fungus and pulsing pink growths that oozed black sap into stagnant puddles. Rosie gagged as a thick drop splashed onto her shoe. What is this?" Elle didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the far end of the tunnel, where a massive wooden door stood embedded in the earth, its surface covered in carvings of open-mouthed clown faces, each with hollow eyes and wide, empty grins. Jonah's camera light flickered as he filmed the door. What the fuck is this place?" Marcus whimpered between them, his head lolling side to side. He's waiting. Elle stepped forward, placing her hand on the cold, damp wood. For a moment, everything went silent. She felt the heartbeat of the thing behind the door vibrating through her bones, slow, heavy, and impossibly vast. Then Mr. Silly's voice whispered from the darkness around them, so close it felt like it was curling around her neck, "Welcome home, little star." Jonah screamed as the pink growths along the walls pulsed and split open, revealing rows of yellowed teeth and black glass eyes within. Rosie sobbed, clutching Marcus tighter. Elle clenched her fists until her nails drew blood, her voice a ragged whisper, "This ends tonight." She pressed her shoulder to the door and pushed. With a sound like cracking bones, it swung inward, revealing the cavern beyond. And what lay inside? The door moaned open with a wet, tearing sound, like old flesh split by a dull blade. Warm, rotten air belched from the darkness beyond, carrying a smell so thick with iron and sweetness that Rosie gagged and turned away, retching bile onto the stone floor. Jonah lifted his camera with trembling hands. Its flickering light cut a thin beam into the cavern. For a heartbeat, the group stood frozen on the threshold, the only sounds the drip of condensation and the dull, ragged rasp of Marcus's breathing. Inside the cavern, something pulsed. A dull, rhythmic beat, wet, meaty, the echo of a heart too large to belong to anything born cleanly into this world. Elle stepped forward. The stone beneath her sneakers was slick with a thin film of black slime. Fungal stalks pushed up from cracks in the stone, pulsing gently, exhaling warm, humid air that smelled like rotting carnival treats left in the sun for decades. The cavern opened up wider the deeper they went, its ceiling lost in darkness. Glimmers of moisture caught Jonah's camera light, revealing pillars of pulsing tissue winding like grotesque roots through the rock. And then, at the center, they saw it. A massive, amorphous lump of pinkish flesh fused into the cavern floor. Veins the size of tree trunks snaked out from its pulsing body, burrowing into the earth in every direction. Clown masks, identical white porcelain with the same painted grin, jutted from its surface like cancerous nodules, each mask facing a different direction, each with hollow black eyeholes that dripped a thin, tarry fluid. The thing breathed, its surface heaving up and down, emitting a sound halfway between a giggle and a death rattle. Rosie whimpered behind Elle, her voice tiny and cracked. What is it? Jonah spoke through gritted teeth, the camera shaking in his grasp. It's him. That's Mr. Silly. Or whatever he really is. Elle felt bile rising in her throat. She forced herself forward, each step sinking slightly into the spongy, warm floor. The masks turned slowly toward her as she approached, as if tracking her with sightless, liquid eyes. One of them cracked open at the mouth. Inside, a wet spiral of teeth rotated lazily, grinding together with a sickening click click click. Marcus groaned behind them. His voice came out as a rasping croak. Elle, don't touch it, but Elle didn't stop. She stepped closer until she stood at the edge of the thing's pulsing mass. The heat radiating off it was suffocating. Sweet, rancid steam rose from the seams between its fused lumps of meat. Mr. Silly's voice oozed from the masks all at once, layered in a chorus that rattled her bones. You brought me such sweet memories, little star. Did you think you'd ever really leave me behind? Elle's vision swam. She saw herself as a child again, in her birthday dress, holding a sticky handful of pink cotton candy, the taste of sugar masking the copper tang of blood in her mouth. She saw her mother's smile, stretched too wide, lips cracked and bleeding, teeth filed to points. She saw the carousel spinning endlessly under a black sky. She forced the visions away, pressing her hand to her temple. You're done feeding on me. The masks laughed, 1,000 echoing, breathless giggles that made Jonah drop the camera with a clatter. I'm never done, little star. You are me. You've always been mine. Elle stepped closer. Her shoe sank into a pocket of soft tissue, warm fluid oozing up around her ankle. She didn't flinch. Then kill me, she hissed. End it. If I'm your root, cut me out. The masks fell silent for a heartbeat. Then, slowly, one of them split open at the forehead, cracking down the center. From the wound, a slick tendril uncoiled, pink, ropey, tipped with a glistening hook of bone. Rosie screamed as the tendril lunged at Elle's chest. Jonah lunged too, not at Elle, but at the tendril, swinging the camera like a club. He smashed it against the fleshy appendage with a sickening crunch. The tendril recoiled, spraying black fluid that hissed where it hit the cavern floor. Elle fell back, gasping. Rosie grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away. Jonah shouted, voice cracking, how do we kill it? Elle pushed Rosie aside, standing again, feet slipping in the gore. We cut the root. We burn it out. We starve it. Jonah stared at her, wild-eyed. With what? Matches? You think a fire's gonna kill that? Elle's eyes darted around the cavern. Steam pipes. Old maintenance tunnels. Gas lines, decades old, likely ruptured and leaking into the soil for years. An idea sparked behind her eyes, wild, reckless, and final. There's gas, she said. This place is rotting from the inside out. It's a bomb waiting to happen. Jonah's eyes widened. You're insane. Do you have a better idea? She snapped. He looked at the thing, the tumor in the earth, its clown masks turning back and forth in unison like a nest of grinning serpents, and he just shook his head. Rosie knelt beside Marcus, who was blinking up at the ceiling. His mouth moved silently, tongue dry and cracked. She looked up at Elle, voice trembling. Do it. Whatever you have to do. Just, do it. Elle scanned the cavern. A rusted old control box jutted from the far wall, half-eaten by mold and fungus. Pipes ran from it along the ceiling and into the fleshy mass at the center. She turned to Jonah. Help me. Together they half-walked, half-waded through the warm sludge. Flies rose in lazy clouds around them. The control box was covered in growths, but beneath the slime she could see the faded labels, pump, valve, vent. She looked at Jonah. If I open the vents, the gas will flood this chamber. All of it. Jonah wiped sweat from his face. And then what? Elle turned her hollow eyes on him. Then we light it. He laughed, a high, broken sound. We'll die. Elle nodded once. We'll kill him too. Jonah stared at her. Slowly, he set his ruined camera down, pressed his back against the control box, and slid to the floor, laughing until tears streamed down his cheeks. Elle reached for the valve, her fingers slipping on the grime. She forced it to turn with a shriek of rust and metal. The pipes groaned. Deep inside the walls, something hissed, a faint, rising roar of pressure. Mr. Silly's voice oozed from the masks again, sharp now, laced with a ragged edge of fear, little star. No. No. Don't you want to play forever? Don't you want your birthday again and again? Elle's lip curled. Happy birthday to me, you piece of shit. She spun the second valve open. The hiss grew louder, echoing up through the cavern like 1,000 rattlesnakes waking in the dark. Rosie pulled Marcus away from the center, dragging him toward the stairs. Jonah followed, stumbling like a man underwater. Elle stayed by the valves, hand trembling over the last lever. Mr. Silly's 1,000 masks screamed at once, a noise that scraped the inside of her skull raw. You are mine, Elle. Mine forever. She smiled through her tears. Not anymore. And she pulled the lever. The lever shrieked against rusted bolts, and the cavern responded like a living lung exhaling its final breath. Gas poured from cracked pipes and bloated metal seams, hissing through the fetid air. The hiss rose in pitch until it blended with the rattling laughter of Mr. Silly's 1,000 masks. Elle stumbled back from the control box, her hands slick with black grime and blood from where the sharp edge had sliced her palm open. The scent of the gas was sharp beneath the rotting sweetness, cold, chemical, terrifyingly flammable. Jonah grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her once. Elle. Elle. What now? The tumor at the cavern's heart pulsed faster, its flesh shuddering like something in pain, or in rage. The clown masks writhed on their stalks, swiveling to track her with black eye-holes that now wept streams of oily tar. Rosie crouched by Marcus near the tunnel entrance, her fingers digging into his shoulders as she tried to pull him upright. He was half awake, his lips cracked open, eyes rolling wildly. Every so often, his throat worked, a wet gasp rattling from deep inside him. Elle shoved Jonah's hands off her shoulders and stumbled to them. "Get him up. We can't be in here when it goes." Rosie's eyes were wide, pupils pinpricks. "How do we light it?" "Elle, how?" The tumor's laughter thundered through the cavern, 1,000 mirrored voices layered on top of each other, glitching in and out of sync. "Run, run, little star. Run and I'll follow. I'll wear your skin. I'll sing your name to the worms." Elle searched the walls for something, anything. A spark. A match. The control box was rusted dead. She felt her pockets with trembling hands. Keys, her cracked phone, a half-dead lighter from her brother's chain-smoking habit. She fumbled it out, flicked it once. A thin flame sputtered to life, flickered, died. Jonah's voice cracked behind her. "We can't light it down here. If you do, we'll die. You'll die." Elle's laugh broke out in a ragged bark. "If we don't, we're already dead." Jonah's mouth twisted, maybe into a scream, maybe into a wordless prayer. He grabbed the lighter from her hand, thumb flicking it desperately until a wavering flame shivered into life again. Elle turned to Rosie. "Get Marcus up the stairs. Now." Rosie tried. Marcus's head lolled side to side, but he pushed with his feet when she lifted him, groaning in a voice that was half his own and half something else. Jonah held the flame near the ground. He looked up at Elle, his eyes gleaming wet in the flickering light. "Tell me we're doing the right thing." She didn't answer. The tumor's laughter turned into a wheezing, furious howl. Veins in the walls pulsed faster, the cavern walls twitching in and out like infected wounds. Rosie's voice rose in a wail as she dragged Marcus up the rusted steps. Elle turned to Jonah, her voice calm, too calm. "Light it. And run." He hesitated. For one split second, the lighter flame cast a perfect reflection in the porcelain mask nearest him. And the mask split open like a rotten egg, revealing a puckered spiral of teeth and a single, rolling black eye. Jonah screamed and dropped the lighter. It clattered once, twice, and the flame kissed a thin ribbon of leaking gas. The world exploded. Heat slammed Elle backward into the cavern wall, her ears ringing with the roar of sudden fire. The gas ignited in a wave that turned the foul air into a blast furnace. Jonah disappeared in the white-yellow bloom. His scream cut off in an instant. Elle crawled, hair and sleeves catching sparks, lungs searing with every breath. She pulled herself to her feet just long enough to see the tumor writhe in the new inferno. The clown masks shrieked, 1,000 faces wailing in unison, cracking apart at the seams as the flesh beneath them blackened and split. Fire raced through the root veins, lighting them like fuses in the soil. She forced her legs to move. Half stumbling, half crawling toward the tunnel's mouth. Behind her, the cavern ceiling began to cave inward, chunks of scorched rock slamming into the burning flesh of the thing that should never have lived. Elle reached the stairs where Rosie clung to Marcus's shoulder, dragging him upward step by step. Smoke and oily flames licked at the walls behind them, following Elle like a hungry tide. "Go!" Elle screamed. Her voice was a raw strip of flesh in her throat. Rosie shrieked. A sound of sheer animal survival, and hauled Marcus up the final steps. Elle grabbed his other arm, ignoring the heat blistering her palms, ignoring the roar of the fire that wanted to drag her backward into the tumor's funeral pyre. They emerged into the funhouse, now alive with smoke. The warped mirrors reflected flickers of orange and black, each reflection showing Elle as she really was, hair half-burnt, skin smeared with soot and blood, eyes wide with primal terror. The clown laughter still echoed, but softer now, cracking and broken, as if the voices were being torn apart by the fire devouring their root. They burst through the maintenance door and staggered into the funhouse corridor. Elle felt the heat at her back like a giant's open maw, belching its last curse as the flames tore through rotted support beams and tunnels long hidden beneath the carnival. The walls buckled. Mirrors split with shrieks of shattering glass, the warped reflections twisting in on themselves until nothing but splinters and ash remained. Outside the funhouse, night air hit her face like a slap. Cool, clean, but thick with drifting smoke. She didn't stop. She and Rosie dragged Marcus past the carousel, where the horses had begun to warp and sag in the fresh heat belching up from the ground beneath. Far behind them, the funhouse roof cracked open like a broken jaw. Fire punched skyward, carrying flecks of burning paint and ash that rained down on the Midway. The abandoned carnival shrieked in rust and wood, a chorus of collapse. They didn't stop until they reached the edge of the cracked parking lot. The remains of the manager's booth flickered in the glow of the fire behind them. They laid Marcus down on the cracked asphalt. He stared up at the night sky, eyes half rolled back, chest shuddering. His mouth opened once, a wordless gasp. Then closed again. Rosie collapsed beside him, sobbing so hard her whole body shuddered. Elle fell to her knees, arms limp at her sides. Behind them, the carnival burned. No more music. No more mirrors. No more Mr. Silly. Only fire, and the promise of whatever came next. Elle felt her breath catch in her raw throat. She tilted her head back, staring up at the sky. Somewhere beyond the drift of black smoke, stars glittered, cold and indifferent. She didn't know if she'd really killed it. She only knew she'd done what she had to do. Somewhere behind her eyes, something laughed, quieter now. Far away. But not gone. Elle sat on the edge of the cracked asphalt parking lot, watching the carnival burn. Orange light flickered across the warped cars left behind decades ago, their roofs collapsed under moss and time. The funhouse glowed like a dying furnace, flames devouring its skeletal beams, pouring black smoke into the bruised sky. Rosie lay curled beside Marcus, her sobs quiet now, her eyes hollow and unblinking. Marcus breathed in thin, ragged gasps, each exhale bubbling blood from the corner of his lips. The heat had blistered his skin along his neck and jaw, the burns angry red against his pale flesh. Elle's hair smelled of burnt sugar and smoke. Her hands shook where they rested on her knees, blistered and blackened where she had grabbed Marcus to drag him out. The carnival collapsed in slow-motion ruin. The carousel roof buckled inward, its central pillar finally crumbling under decades of rot and the fresh rupture from below. The painted horses twisted in the flames, their enamel eyes melting into black tears that hissed where they struck the blazing wood. Jonah was gone. She tried not to think about his last scream, cut short by the inferno's blast. There was no time to mourn. No time to feel. She focused instead on the night sky above her. Beyond the thick curling smoke, stars blinked coldly. Silent. Indifferent. Rosie's cracked voice broke the stillness. Is it over? Elle didn't answer. She listened to the fire's roar, to the muffled collapses of timber and rusted beams, to the shriek of old metal torn apart by heat. Beneath those sounds, she waited for another, laughter, whispering, the click of bone teeth. Nothing came. Rosie pushed herself upright, clutching her burned wrist to her chest. Her eyes were red with soot and grief. Elle, please, tell me it's over. Elle turned to her. Her voice came out raw, scraped clean of all certainty. I don't know. Rosie's mouth twisted as if she wanted to sob again, but no tears came. She crawled to Marcus's side, brushing burnt hair from his blistered forehead. His eyelids fluttered open, pupils dilated wide. He swallowed once, blood flecking his dry lips. His voice was a hoarse rasp. Is he gone? Elle shook her head slowly. I don't know. Marcus's gaze drifted past her, toward the blazing funhouse. The reflected firelight danced in his dark eyes. I can still hear him. Rosie flinched. No. Don't say that. Don't. Marcus's lips cracked into a faint smile. He's laughing. Elle felt nausea coil up her throat, but she forced herself to remain still. Where, Marcus? Where is he? Marcus's chest hitched with a wet, rattling laugh. Everywhere. Rosie covered her mouth, tears finally breaking through the soot streaking her cheeks. No, please no, we burned it, we burned it. Marcus's body spasmed suddenly, his back arching off the asphalt. Blood spilled from his mouth in a bubbling stream. His eyes rolled back until only veined whites showed beneath his burned eyelids. Rosie screamed and grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. Marcus! Stay with me. Elle crawled forward, pressing her hand to his chest. His heart still beat, fast, erratic, fluttering like a dying moth trapped behind glass. Then his lips moved, and a voice came out that was not his. Burn the fruit, and the roots remain, deep, deep, always laughing in the dark. Rosie's sob turned into a scream. She clapped her hands over her ears, rocking back and forth. Elle felt cold spread up her arms from where she touched Marcus's chest, as if something inside him pulsed in rhythm with the tumor they had burned. Mr. Silly's words oozed from his ruined mouth, too calm, too sweet. You can't kill what laughs in the soil, little star, you can't burn what never lived. Elle jerked her hand away as if scalded. Marcus's body slumped back to the pavement, chest rising in tiny, shallow breaths. Rosie clutched at Elle's burned wrist, eyes wild. What do we do? What do we do? Elle swallowed the scream building in her throat. Her burned palms throbbed with every frantic heartbeat. She looked at the carnival. The flames devoured the funhouse entirely now, sending gouts of sparks into the sky. Beyond it, the Ferris wheel stood silhouetted against the blaze, blackened metal gleaming red-hot. The Midway's cracked asphalt writhed in the heat haze. For a moment, she thought she saw shadows dancing there, clown silhouettes with split porcelain grins, but when she blinked, they were gone. Her thoughts felt distant, each word echoing back to her from the depths of her skull. If the carnival is the fruit, where are the roots? She remembered the cavern. The tumor's veins plunging deeper into the earth, beyond where fire had touched. It's in the land. Rosie's nails dug into her wrist, pulling her back. Elle, what do we do? I can't. I can't take this. I can't. Elle turned to her. Her voice was flat, empty of fear. We leave. Rosie stared at her, tears streaking soot across her cheeks. Leave? To where? Anywhere, Elle said. He's in this place. In the ground. The carnival is only one mask. Marcus coughed, blood dripping down his neck. His eyes opened again, glazed and unseeing. His lips trembled. He's coming back. Rosie sobbed brokenly. Elle grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her to stand. "Help me." Together, they pulled Marcus upright between them. His feet scraped across the asphalt, leaving streaks of blood and ash. Elle didn't look back at the funhouse. She didn't look at the Ferris wheel, or the collapsed carousel still glowing with smoldering coals. She kept her eyes forward, fixed on the overgrown path that led back to the highway. Back to their car. Back to a world that felt 100 miles away from the rotting carnival. Behind them, the fire roared on, consuming wood and metal and flesh. But beneath it all, under the crackling collapse and the wind howling through flame, she thought she heard it again, that laugh. Soft, distant, patient. Waiting. Elle drove with trembling hands. The cracked blacktop of the old service road blurred beneath the headlights. The carnival fire still glowed on the horizon behind them, painting the undersides of the drifting clouds with orange-red light. The smoke trailed after them for miles, a funeral shroud spreading across the night. Rosie sat in the back seat with Marcus's head cradled in her lap. His breathing was ragged and wet, each exhale bubbling through the blood pooling at the corners of his mouth. His eyes opened and closed with the slow inevitability of dying machinery. Neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the whine of the engine and the rattling of broken plastic hanging from the cracked rearview mirror. Elle's burned palms throbbed against the steering wheel. The heat-blistered skin had split in places, leaking thin lines of blood that smeared across the leather grip. She stared straight ahead, her gaze unfocused, as memories flickered across her inner darkness, Mr. Silly's porcelain mask splitting open to reveal black teeth and a single rolling eye. Jonah's scream cut short by fire. The funhouse ceiling caving in behind her, flames belching upward like a funeral pyre for something that refused to die. Marcus's mouth moving with a voice not his own. "You can't burn what never lived." She blinked hard, forcing her vision to clear. The road twisted ahead, narrow and hemmed in by towering pines. The headlights lit up their trunks in brief flashes, revealing tangled undergrowth choked with moss and fallen needles. Rosie's voice broke the silence. "Tiny. Fragile. Elle, what if he follows us?" Elle swallowed against the dry rasp in her throat. "He's rooted there." But his voice. Marcus said. Elle didn't answer. She turned the wheel to avoid a fallen branch, the tires bumping over the cracked asphalt. She could feel the carnival's presence even now, like a splinter left buried beneath her skin. A quiet hum in the marrow of her bones. Marcus coughed, a wet choking sound. Rosie sobbed softly, brushing blood-slick hair from his forehead. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please. Please stay with me." His eyes flickered open. For a heartbeat, they were clear and brown and human. He focused on her face, lips parting. "Rosie," he rasped. She smiled through her tears. "I'm here. I'm here, baby." His mouth twitched into a faint smile, then slackened. His gaze drifted away, unfocused. His chest shuddered once, twice, then fell still. Rosie's breath caught in her throat. She shook him gently, then harder. "Marcus. Marcus. Marcus." Elle didn't look back. She kept her eyes on the road, hands gripping the wheel until her split palms burned with fresh blood. Rosie's wail rose in the back seat, echoing through the empty car like a siren call to something deep and buried. "No. Please. Marcus. Please." Elle's vision blurred with tears. She blinked them away, her gaze fixed on the thin line of yellow paint marking the center of the road. Her voice came out flat, empty. "We'll bury him when we get home." Rosie didn't answer. She rocked back and forth, clutching his cooling body to her chest. Her sobs turned to silent, gasping tremors that shook her shoulders until exhaustion stole even that. They drove in silence for what felt like hours. The trees fell away, replaced by scrub brush and old barbed wire fences marking abandoned cattle fields. The moon rose higher, pale and sickly behind drifting smoke haze. Elle's phone vibrated in her pocket, but she didn't pull it out. Who would she call? The police? The fire department? What would she tell them? "We burned a clown demon rooted in the earth beneath an abandoned carnival. Also, our friend's possessed." Her laugh cracked out of her like broken glass. Rosie flinched in the back seat but said nothing. The headlights illuminated a green road sign half buried in blackberry brambles. Elle slowed as she approached it. The forest pressed close on either side. Fog coiled across the asphalt, catching the headlights in shifting, dancing swirls. For a moment, in one swirling coil, she saw him. Mr. Silly. Standing at the edge of the trees, half hidden by branches. His porcelain mask glowed bone-white in the beams. The painted grin was split down the middle, revealing a black emptiness that swallowed the light. His hollow eyeholes watched the car pass, unblinking. Elle gasped and slammed her foot on the brake. The tires skidded on moss-slick asphalt, the car slewing sideways until it slammed to a stop against a drainage ditch. Rosie screamed, clutching Marcus's body to her chest. "What? What is it?" Elle's chest heaved with ragged breaths. Her burned hands shook against the steering wheel. She turned her gaze back to the tree-line. Nothing there. Only shadows and drifting fog. Rosie sobbed softly, rocking Marcus's corpse. "He's here, isn't he? He's here, he's not gone." Elle swallowed hard, tasting blood at the back of her throat. She forced the car back into gear, the engine whining in protest. The tires spun in the damp moss before catching, pulling them back onto the road. She didn't answer. They drove on, silent except for the ticking of cooling metal and Rosie's broken sobs. The moon rose higher, pale and watchful, casting long skeletal shadows through the drifting fog. Elle didn't look in the rearview mirror again. She didn't want to see who might be sitting in the back seat, smiling through Marcus's dead eyes. The sun was rising when Elle pulled into the cracked driveway of her childhood home. The pale orange glow bled across the peeling white paint of the porch rails and glinted off the rust-choked gutter hanging loose above the entryway. Weeds sprouted tall between slabs of moss-slicked concrete. Morning mist drifted low over the dead grass, curling around the tires as the engine ticked and cooled. Rosie sat silently in the back seat, her head bowed over Marcus's corpse. His skin had turned gray-blue in the dawn light, lips parted in a slack rictus. The dried blood beneath his nostrils had crusted black. His chest no longer rose and fell. Elle sat with her blistered hands gripping the wheel, staring blankly at the sagging front door. The house felt alien now, smaller than she remembered, dark behind the nicotine-stained curtains. She didn't move until Rosie's cracked whisper broke the silence. "Help me." Elle turned. Rosie's red-rimmed eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, glassy and unfocused. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks in black rivulets. Her hands cradled Marcus's limp head in her lap, fingers trembling against his cold scalp. "Help me bring him inside," she whispered again. "Please." Elle's throat felt scraped raw. She swallowed but tasted only bile and ash. Nodding mutely, she forced her burned hands to unclench from the wheel. Her palms had split in the night, skin peeling in angry red strips across the blisters. They climbed out of the car. Morning birds sang weakly from skeletal trees, their thin cries sounding distant and false in the thick, humid air. Elle opened the back door. The scent of blood and rot and burned hair rose from Marcus's body in a suffocating wave. Rosie sobbed and pressed her face to his chest, shoulders shaking. "Rosie," Elle whispered. "We have to move him." Rosie nodded, biting down on her lip until blood welled up. Together, they slid Marcus out of the car. His head lolled back, mouth hanging open. Elle tried not to look into his eyes, half-lidded and clouded over in the milky white of death. They half-carried, half-dragged him up the front steps. The porch boards groaned beneath their weight, but Elle kept moving. Her chest burned with each breath, lungs still scarred from smoke. Rosie stumbled on the top step, almost dropping him, but Elle grabbed his limp arm before he could fall. Inside, the house was cool and dim. Dust motes drifted in slanted dawn beams slicing through the curtains. The scent of old carpet, mildew, and stale candle wax greeted them, layered over the tang of dried blood now filling the air. They laid Marcus on the faded floral couch. His body sagged into the torn cushions, eyes staring sightlessly at the water-stained ceiling. Rosie collapsed beside him, pressing her face to his chest again. Elle stood over them, arms limp at her sides. Her vision blurred at the edges, black creeping in like mold blooming across old wallpaper. She turned away. In the kitchen, a faint buzzing hum cut through the silence. Flies circled a pile of dishes crusted with congealed grease and food scraps. The garbage can was tipped over, stale coffee grounds and sour milk pooling across the linoleum. Her knees gave out. She sank to the floor, back pressed against the fridge, burned palms cradled between her thighs. The hum of the refrigerator compressor rattled through her bones. She didn't know how long she sat there before Rosie's quiet voice drifted in from the living room. "He's not gone." Elle flinched, pressing her eyes closed. Tears burned hot against her raw skin. "Rosie," she croaked. Rosie's voice cracked, a ragged whisper barely audible over the buzzing flies. "He's in Marcus. I hear him. Laughing." Elle forced her eyes open. Shadows wavered across the kitchen tiles as morning light flickered through fluttering curtains. She pushed herself upright on shaking legs and stepped back into the living room. Rosie sat on the couch beside Marcus, her hands twisted in his shirt, rocking back and forth. Her eyes were hollow. Her lips trembled. "He keeps saying my name," she whispered. "But it's not Marcus. It's him." Elle swallowed hard, tasting ash again. Marcus's chest was still. His skin was a mottled patchwork of gray and purple. His mouth hung open, jaw slack. And yet, as Elle stepped closer, she heard it too. A faint, bubbling laugh. Wet. Gurgling. Like something laughing underwater. Rosie sobbed. "He's still here, Elle. He's still here. What do we do? What do we do?" Elle's vision darkened around the edges. She felt her knees lock to keep herself standing. The carnival fire flashed behind her eyelids. Jonah's scream. "Mr. Silly's masks cracking open to reveal teeth and eyes and black, endless hunger. She knelt beside Marcus, her burned hand hovering over his chest. The laughter rippled up from deep inside him, vibrating through the meat and bone, leaking out in tiny shivers of sound. Rosie grabbed her wrist. "Kill him." Elle blinked, meeting her gaze. "What?" Rosie's eyes blazed with feral desperation. "Kill him. Kill Marcus. He's using him like a shell. If you kill him, he can't. Marcus is already dead, Elle whispered. Rosie shook her head violently, tears flying from her lashes. No. No, he's not. He's not. He's still in there. I heard him. He said my name. Elle clenched her teeth, fighting the nausea crawling up her throat. She pressed her burned palm flat to Marcus's sternum. The laughter stopped. The room fell silent except for Rosie's ragged breathing and the flies buzzing in the kitchen. Marcus's dead eyes flickered, pupils contracting. His slack mouth twitched at the corners. The corners curled upward. Into a smile. Rosie screamed, stumbling back off the couch, her heels skidding across the filthy carpet. Marcus's voice bubbled up from his split lips, sweet and lilting and dripping with rot. Little Rosie, little star, won't you play with me forever? Elle jerked her hand away, stumbling back into the coffee table. Old magazines slid to the floor, pages curling with mildew. Marcus's dead body sat up. Vertebrae cracked as his head lolled side to side. The skin along his neck split open, leaking thin black fluid down his chest. His eyes rolled forward, the pupils now black and empty. His mouth opened impossibly wide, splitting the corners of his lips. His jaw unhinged, revealing black gums lined with needle teeth. The voice oozed out again, "You can't kill what was never alive, little star," Rosie screamed, pressing herself against the far wall, clawing at peeling wallpaper. Elle felt something inside her snap. A bone-deep finality. Her burned hands curled into trembling fists. She met the empty black gaze staring out of Marcus's rotting skull. Her voice came out flat and quiet, "Then I'll burn everything." Marcus's corpse sat slumped on the couch, jaw unhinged, black gums lined with rows of needle-like teeth. The skin around his mouth split further as he grinned, thin black fluid dribbling down his chin to soak his torn shirt. Rosie pressed herself against the living room wall, knees drawn up to her chest, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Elle stood frozen. Her burned hands trembled at her sides, blood seeping through the cracked blisters. Her lungs ached with each ragged breath. The humid morning air tasted of sour coffee grounds, mildew, and something darker, an ancient rot curling up from Marcus's slack mouth. The voice poured from him, layered with static, glitching in and out like a warped record. "You thought you burned me out, little star, but the roots run deep, the carnival is only one bloom in the garden of rot." Elle forced her feet forward, knees locking with each step. Her shadow stretched across the torn carpet, flickering as dust motes drifted through fractured beams of dawn light. "Why me?" she croaked, her throat raw as old rope. Marcus's corpse tilted its head, vertebrae grinding with a wet pop pop pop. His milky eyes rolled back to focus on her. His grin widened further, skin splitting up his cheeks toward his ears. "Because you laughed for me, when no one else would." Memories slammed into Elle's mind like hammer blows, the carnival birthday party. Her mother's impatient hiss in her ear, "Smile, Elle. He's paid for 2 hours." The clown's painted porcelain mask leaning down to her face, whispering sweet rot into her ears. The trick where he pulled a coin from behind her ear and made it disappear down his throat with a wet gulp. And her own laughter, thin, nervous, but laughter all the same. The sound that sealed something between them. A promise. Rosie's scream snapped her back. Marcus's corpse lurched upright, feet scraping across the carpet, neck hanging at an unnatural angle. His chest convulsed as the voice rattled through him, "You laughed for me, little star, and so I kept a piece of you, to bloom again, and again." Elle felt her stomach twist, bile rising up her burned throat. Her vision blackened at the edges as rage and terror burned away her last scraps of reason. "You're a parasite," she whispered. "That's all you are." Marcus's corpse twitched, mouth jerking open and closed like a broken puppet. "I am older than words, older than laughter. I am what writhes beneath the roots, what sings beneath the stone, what eats in the dark when the world turns away its gaze." Elle stepped closer, ignoring Rosie's screams. The rot stink poured off Marcus's sagging body in choking waves. Flies clung to his damp skin, crawling over his slack eyelids and into his gaping mouth. She crouched in front of him, so close she could see where his gums had split to reveal a second row of teeth curling up into his sinuses. Her voice came out low, flat, filled with a quiet, final violence, "Then die hungry." She snatched the broken fireplace poker from beside the crumbling hearth. Rust flaked off in her blistered grip. Marcus's corpse lunged forward, jaws splitting wider to reveal a twisting pink tongue studded with tiny writhing black worms. Elle drove the poker up through his jaw. Bone cracked, teeth shattered, and the metal rod punched up into the roof of his mouth with a wet, crunching pop. The corpse spasmed violently. Black fluid poured from its nostrils, eyes, and ears, splattering across Elle's burned hands. Its jaws snapped uselessly around the iron shaft, tongue writhing and curling around it in spasmodic death throes. Rosie screamed, a raw animal sound. She scrambled across the carpet to cower behind the stained recliner. Elle twisted the poker with both hands. The flesh inside Marcus's throat tore with a sucking rip. A final gurgling laugh bubbled out, vibrating up the metal rod and into her hands. Then silence. Marcus's body slumped forward, his slack face impaled on the iron shaft, mouth open wide enough to split the skin from chin to cheekbone. Elle let go of the poker. Her hands burned with fresh blood as she staggered back. The room swam in red and black. Rosie sobbed brokenly behind the recliner. Elle. "What do we do now, what do we do?" Elle turned to her slowly. Her burned face cracked into a hollow smile. "We finish it." Rosie shook her head violently, tears flying from her lashes. "Finish what?" "It's over. It's over." "No," Elle rasped. "He said there were other blooms. Other gardens." Rosie stared at her with wide, glassy eyes. I can't do this. I just want to go home." Elle crouched in front of her, ignoring the blinding pain in her hands. "Listen to me. If there are others. If he's still feeding somewhere, he'll come back. He always comes back." Rosie's lips trembled. Her voice cracked like shattered glass. "Then let him. Let him take me. I don't care anymore." Elle grabbed her shoulders, shaking her so hard her teeth clacked together. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare let him win." Rosie sobbed, collapsing forward into Elle's burned chest, clinging to her with trembling hands. Elle wrapped her arms around her, staring over Rosie's shoulder at Marcus's corpse. The poker stuck up from his mouth at an obscene angle, splitting his cracked lips wide. Black fluid dripped slowly onto the carpet, pooling around his slack jaw. The morning sun rose higher outside, casting pale light through the filthy windowpanes. Dust motes danced in the beams like tiny ash flakes, swirling around the two women as they rocked together in silence. Elle closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw the carnival burning again, flames devouring warped mirrors, peeling paint curling back to reveal rusted bones. But beneath the fire, she still heard it, that faint, patient laugh. Waiting. Always waiting. The sun rose higher, smearing pale gold across nicotine-stained curtains. Dust motes drifted in the stale beams of light, swirling around the living room like drifting ash. The house was silent except for Rosie's broken sobs and the steady drip 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 of black fluid from Marcus's corpse. Elle sat cross-legged on the matted carpet, burned hands resting palm up in her lap. Her blistered skin had split overnight, weeping thin lines of blood onto her thighs. Her eyes were hollow, unfocused, staring at nothing. Rosie crouched beside the recliner, knees drawn to her chest, rocking slowly. Her cheeks were crusted with dried tears and soot. Her cracked lips moved silently, repeating a mantra Elle couldn't hear. Marcus's corpse slumped on the couch across from them, the fireplace poker still jutting from his split jaw. Flies buzzed in lazy circles around his gaping mouth, crawling across his dead eyes. Elle exhaled slowly, feeling her chest tighten around the stale air. Beneath the silence, she felt it still, the faint vibration in her bones. The echo of Mr. Silly's laughter. He was gone from Marcus, but not destroyed. Burn the fruit, but the roots remain. Her burned fingers twitched against her knees. She forced her eyes to focus, turning her gaze to Rosie. We can't stay here. Rosie flinched at the sound of her voice. Her cracked fingernails dug into her arms as she rocked faster. Rosie, Elle said again, her voice flat. Look at me. Slowly, Rosie lifted her head. Her pupils were pinpricks, eyes ringed with bruised shadows. We need to leave, Elle said. Rosie's lips trembled. Leave to where? Where? Anywhere he isn't rooted. Rosie laughed then, a thin, cracked sound that edged into hysteria. He's everywhere, Elle. You heard him. You can't burn what was never alive. Elle's jaw clenched so hard pain shot down her neck. Then we starve him. Rosie shook her head violently, tears flying from her lashes. How? How? Elle didn't answer. She pushed herself upright, her knees popping. The room swayed around her in waves of gray and red. She stepped past Marcus's corpse, ignoring the buzzing flies, and grabbed her cracked phone from the ash-dusted end table. The screen was spiderwebbed with fractures, but it lit up. 2 missed calls from Jonah's number, before he died, and a dozen system notifications from days ago. Her thumb hovered over the cracked glass. The screen flickered and distorted with each tap, but it obeyed. She opened the browser and typed with shaking fingers, Carnival Fire Ashevale News. The page loaded in agonizing slowness over the weak signal. Finally, headlines appeared, firefighters contain blaze at abandoned carnival grounds, authorities investigating illegal trespassing, arson suspected, local urban explorer feared dead in funhouse collapse. Elle's eyes scanned each headline, her burned fingers leaving smears of blood across the glass. Beneath the articles, a smaller related headline caught her gaze. Abandoned traveling carnival grounds demolished after fire in Louisiana, similar cult murmurs as Ashevale incident. She clicked it. The article was brief. A carnival had burned to the ground 2 years prior in Louisiana. Locals whispered about missing children and clown cult rituals. The land was bulldozed over after the fire. Elle's stomach twisted. Her vision blurred. Another fruit. Another bloom. She searched further, pulling up articles from old paranormal forums archived in broken black background pages riddled with malware warnings. Clown cult discovered in 1972 near Iron Vale. Tunnels found beneath carnival grounds. 1953, carnival collapse in Oklahoma. Survivors report laughing shadows and porcelain masks. 1911, traveling carnival abandoned overnight in Alabama. Locals found funhouse burned. Rumors of children disappearing during mirror maze performances. Rosie's sobs grew louder behind her. Elle lowered the phone, staring at the wall as if she could see through it, through soil and rock and rot. He was everywhere. Always had been. Blooming and burning again and again across the decades. Feeding on laughter and fear, wearing masks of painted porcelain and sugar-sweet rot. The carnival was never the seed. It was only the flower. She turned to Rosie, her voice distant. He's older than the carnival. Rosie blinked, tears streaking down her ash-smeared cheeks. What are you talking about? He's in the land, Elle whispered. Older than towns. Older than people. Carnival is just, where he flowers. Rosie shook her head, covering her ears. Stop. Stop. Elle stepped forward, grabbed her shoulders. Rosie flinched, eyes wide with terror. We find the root, Elle rasped. We kill it. Rosie sobbed. You can't kill God, Elle. Elle's burned lips curled into a bitter smile. He's not God. He's a parasite. A worm in the dark. Feeding on laughter because it's easy. Rosie shook her head, tears dripping onto Elle's blistered hands. How do you know? How do you know anything anymore? Elle's smile widened, splitting a fresh crack in her lower lip. Blood welled up, salty and metallic on her tongue. Because God wouldn't need masks. She let go of Rosie and turned to Marcus's corpse. Flies fled from her movement, buzzing in frantic clouds around her head. She grabbed the poker embedded in his skull and yanked. It came free with a wet sucking pop, spraying black fluid across her chest. Rosie gagged, curling into a sobbing ball. Elle held the poker in her trembling grip. Its rusted shaft dripped rot and clotted blood onto the carpet. She walked to the window and shoved the curtain aside. Morning sunlight spilled across her burned face, casting her flickering reflection into the cracked glass. For a moment, she saw herself as she truly was. Hair matted with blood and soot. Skin blistered and peeling. Eyes hollow and rimmed with ash. A porcelain mask cracked down the center, revealing empty darkness behind her gaze. She blinked. The reflection returned to her own face, gaunt, trembling, alive. Elle lifted the poker and rested it against her shoulder. Her burned hands tightened around its blood-slick grip. She turned back to Rosie. Get up, she said softly. Rosie sobbed harder, shaking her head. Elle stepped forward, eyes blazing with dead resolve. Get up, she repeated. Slowly, sobbing, Rosie pulled herself upright. Her legs trembled beneath her, threatening to collapse. Elle pressed the poker into her burned palm, feeling the jagged rust bite into her blistered skin. We're going hunting. They left Marcus's corpse slumped on the couch, flies gathering thick around his gaping mouth. Elle didn't glance back as she stepped off the warped porch boards into the humid morning air. The sun was high now, but its warmth felt sickly and sour against her blistered skin. Sweat mixed with dried blood on her burned palms, streaking the rusted poker she carried. Rosie stumbled behind her, silent except for her ragged breathing. Her shirt clung damply to her thin frame, streaked with ash and flecks of dried black fluid from Marcus's corpse. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, pupils tiny pinpricks lost in gray-blue irises. Elle tossed the poker into the back seat of the car and climbed behind the wheel. Her cracked phone lay on the passenger seat, its shattered screen glowing with the last website she had opened, Ironvale Carnival Collapse, 1972, Tunnel Systems and Cult Murmurs. She flicked the ignition with trembling fingers. The engine coughed, shuddered, and roared to life. Rosie climbed into the passenger seat without a word, folding her hands in her lap like a child waiting for punishment. They pulled out of the gravel drive, the wheels crunching over fallen pine needles and broken glass. Behind them, the house sagged in silent ruin, curtains fluttering through cracked windows like rotted bandages. Marcus's face flickered across Elle's mind, slack-jawed, eyes rolled white, mouth splitting wider and wider to reveal those rows of black needle teeth. She forced the memory away and focused on the road ahead. The narrow state highway twisted through endless pine forest. Shafts of dusty gold light filtered down between skeletal branches, illuminating drifting clouds of gnats. For miles, neither woman spoke. Finally, Rosie's whisper broke the silence. "Where are we going?" Elle's burned hands tightened around the wheel. Her voice came out flat, scraped raw by smoke and grief. "Iron Vale." Rosie's cracked lips trembled. "Why there?" "It burned in 1972, Elle said. "Tunnels beneath the Carnival. Same pattern. Same roots." Rosie swallowed hard, a thin whimper escaping her throat. What do we do when we get there?" Elle didn't answer. The road curved left, revealing a rusted green highway sign half buried in blackberry brambles, Iron Vale, 84 miles. Rosie turned her face to the window, tears streaking down her ash-smeared cheeks. Her breath fogged the cracked glass. In the reflection, she caught a glimpse of Elle's burned face, gaunt and hollow-eyed, lips split and bleeding where she bit down too hard on her words. Neither woman spoke again until they pulled off the highway 3 hours later, rolling through a crumbling ghost town. Iron Vale's main street was lined with abandoned brick buildings, windows boarded with rotting plywood. Weeds sprouted through cracked sidewalks. The only movement came from vultures perched atop sagging telephone poles, wings spread to catch the weak afternoon sun. They parked in front of a rusted chain-link fence topped with twisted barbed wire. Beyond it lay the carnival grounds, or what was left of them. Charred timbers jutted from the weed-choked earth like broken ribs. Ash-coated metal beams twisted into warped arcs where rides once stood. Beneath a collapsed Ferris wheel lay a half-buried clown sign, its paint blistered black by the fire. Only the faintest ghost of a red grin remained. Rosie clutched her arms around her chest. "It's gone, it's all gone." Elle climbed out, gripping the poker tight. Her burned feet sank into ash and dry moss as she approached the fence. She pressed her palm against the rusted chain link, staring at the ruins. Tunnels beneath the Carnival. She turned to Rosie. "Help me find an entrance." Rosie shook her head violently, tears spraying from her lashes. "No, please. I can't go down there. I can't do it again, please Elle." Elle grabbed her by the wrist, hard enough to make Rosie whimper. Her blistered face twisted into a snarl. "He's not gone. This is just the fruit rotted away. The roots are still here. And if we don't kill them, it'll bloom again." Rosie sobbed, her knees buckling. Elle yanked her upright and shoved her forward. "Help me." Together they scrambled over the twisted fence. Rosie tore her jeans on a jagged wire, but didn't cry out. Her eyes were vacant as she stumbled across the weed-choked grounds, scanning burned booths and collapsed rides. Elle kicked aside charred boards until her boot thudded hollow against rusted metal. She dropped to her knees, scraping away ash and scorched dirt to reveal a hinged trapdoor, blackened but intact. A faded yellow stencil read, "Maintenance, staff only." She looked back at Rosie, who stood trembling with silent tears streaking her cheeks. "Help me," Elle rasped. Together they pried the hatch open. The rusted hinges screamed. A blast of damp, sour air rushed up from the darkness below, reeking of mold, old urine, and something deeper, something sweet and rotten beneath it all. Elle grabbed the poker and climbed down first. Her burned hands slipped on the damp metal rungs, leaving streaks of blood behind her. Rosie followed, her quiet sobs echoing down the narrow shaft. The maintenance tunnel was low and lined with crumbling concrete. Old posters clung to the walls and peeling scraps, Mr. Silly's funhouse of laughs. Mirror maze, see your true self. Elle's chest tightened as she stepped forward, shadows twisting around her flickering phone light. Beneath her feet, the concrete felt soft in places, sagging under her weight. They walked in silence until the tunnel opened into a wide chamber supported by rusted iron pillars. Water dripped from exposed pipes overhead. At the far end stood a warped wooden door, its paint blistered and peeled away to reveal blackened wood beneath. Elle pressed her burned palm against it. For a moment, everything was silent except Rosie's ragged breathing. Then a faint vibration thrummed up through her arm. The door was warm, pulsing slightly beneath her touch. She heard it then. A faint giggle. High-pitched. Childlike. Sweet and rotted. Echoing up from the depths beyond the door. Rosie whimpered, clutching Elle's sleeve. Elle, please. I can't. I can't go in there. Elle didn't turn. Her burned lips cracked into a cold smile. You don't have to. She raised the poker and drove it into the door seam. The wood splintered with a sharp crack, releasing a gush of hot, humid air that stank of burnt sugar and decay. Beneath the smell came a new scent. Thick, metallic, coppery. Blood. Rosie gagged, covering her mouth with trembling hands. Elle kicked the broken door inward. It fell away, revealing a sloping tunnel lined with damp earth and warped wood beams. Faint phosphorescent growths pulsed along the ceiling, casting sickly green light across the path ahead. Far down the tunnel, they saw it, a flicker of white porcelain. The faint sound of muffled laughter. Waiting. Always waiting. The sloping tunnel sucked them down into humid blackness. Elle led the way, the rusted poker clutched in her burned grip. Her blistered hands slipped along its shaft, leaving smears of blood on the rust-pitted iron. Rosie followed behind, silent except for her ragged breathing and the faint sobs she could no longer swallow down. The phosphorescent growths along the ceiling pulsed faint green light across warped support beams slick with moss. The air grew warmer with each step, thick with the sweet rot of burnt sugar and old blood. Flies buzzed lazily around their faces, crawling over their skin in slow, hungry drifts. The tunnel widened into a broad underground chamber lined with rotting carnival props. Mold-choked clown heads with peeling paint grinned down from warped plywood walls. Rusted popcorn machines stood half-collapsed, their glass windows smeared black with mold and streaks of congealed grease. Rosie gagged behind Elle, clapping her hand over her mouth. Tears streaked her soot-caked cheeks as her eyes flickered left to right, tracking unseen movements in the flickering green shadows. Elle didn't flinch. Her blistered feet crunched across soggy straw and black sludge. Her burned lips curled in a silent snarl. At the far end of the chamber, a massive wooden stage jutted from the earth, built from warped planks half-eaten by termites. Mold bloomed across its surface in veined spiderwebs of gray and green. The tattered remains of red stage curtains sagged from rusted rods above, their fabric rotted to dangling threads. And at the center of the stage stood Mr. Silly. His porcelain mask was cracked down the center, revealing slick pink tissue beneath. His painted grin curled up to his hollow black eye holes. He wore a stained clown suit streaked with black ichor, the fabric hanging in shredded ropes from his skeletal frame. His arms were too long, fingertips brushing the floor, nails split and blackened like rotting wood. His voice oozed out, layered in childlike sing-song over a rattling bass growl. "Little star, you've come to see my garden." Elle felt Rosie tremble behind her, felt the hitch in her breath become a keening sob. Mr. Silly raised his arms. Around him, the walls pulsed. The paint peeled away in strips to reveal flesh beneath, veined, wet, crawling with tiny writhing worms. Rows of broken clown masks jutted from the walls, each with hollow eye holes leaking black fluid onto the straw-strewn floor. The masks moved in unison, mouths cracking open to reveal rotting gums lined with teeth too small and too many, clacking together in silent laughter. Mr. Silly stepped forward. His feet made no sound on the mold-choked stage. His cracked mask tilted left, then right, as if regarding Elle with amusement. "You burned my bloom, but you cannot burn my roots." Elle raised the poker. Her burned voice cracked out in a ragged whisper, "Watch me." Mr. Silly's grin widened impossibly, splitting his mask from chin to brow. The flesh beneath pulsed wetly, oozing black ichor down his chest. "You can burn this garden, little star, but I will always find another soil." The masks on the walls laughed together in a clacking chorus. The floor beneath Elle's feet pulsed, and she stumbled backward as the straw peeled away to reveal soft pink flesh lined with twitching taste buds. Rosie screamed behind her. Elle turned to see her sinking to her knees, clutching her head in both hands, nails digging bloody gouges into her scalp. "Make it stop!" Rosie shrieked. "Please, Elle, make it stop." Mr. Silly leaned forward from the stage, his arms stretching unnaturally, fingers cracking as they lengthened toward Rosie's trembling form. "Don't cry, little blossom. I'll make you smile again." Elle lunged forward, driving the poker up into his chest. The rusted tip punched through cracking porcelain with a sharp snap, plunging deep into the rotting tissue beneath. Mr. Silly's laughter turned into a shrill scream, vibrating through the chamber so hard dust and mold rained from the beams above. Black ichor poured down the poker's shaft, splattering across Elle's burned hands and bare feet. The smell was sweet and rancid, like burnt sugar rotting in wet earth. Mr. Silly's arms wrapped around her shoulders, pulling her close. His cracked mask pressed against her cheek. She felt the wet pink flesh beneath pulse against her skin. His voice rasped into her ear, hot and bubbling with rot. "You can't kill what feeds on forever," Elle snarled, twisting the poker deeper. Flesh tore with a sucking rip. Mr. Silly convulsed, his long fingers clawing deep gouges into her back. Black fluid poured down his arms onto her shoulders, steaming where it touched her blistered skin. Behind her, Rosie's screams rose in a broken wail. Mr. Silly's body slumped forward, his mask cracking fully apart to reveal the slick mass of pink muscle beneath. Rows of needle teeth studded the wet surface, gnashing and grinding in death spasms. Elle yanked the poker free and staggered back. Mr. Silly collapsed onto the stage in a convulsing heap, black fluid pooling around his twitching limbs. The walls shuddered. The clown masks shrieked in unison, their teeth clacking in staccato horror. The flesh beneath the walls began to tear apart, revealing dark tunnels lined with veined pink tissue. The entire chamber trembled. Dust and mold rained from the ceiling as beams cracked and split. Rosie scrambled to Elle's side, clutching her burned arm with blood-slick fingers. "Elle," she sobbed. "What do we do? What do we do?" Elle didn't answer. She grabbed Rosie's wrist and dragged her toward the collapsing tunnel. Behind them, Mr. Silly's dying body writhed in twitching spasms. His laughter rose again, weaker now, bubbling up through black blood. "You can't burn what never lived." The walls peeled away in strips of flesh as the ceiling caved inward. Elle and Rosie stumbled into the maintenance shaft, clawing up rusted rungs as the earth shuddered beneath them. They burst into the gray daylight, lungs heaving for cold, clean air. Behind them, the carnival grounds collapsed in a shuddering roar. The burned Ferris wheel crumpled into itself, sending up a plume of black dust that rose into the sky like funeral smoke. Elle fell to her knees, gasping, her burned hands digging into the ash-choked grass. Rosie collapsed beside her, sobbing, her tears streaking soot across her trembling cheeks. For a long moment, neither woman moved. The sky above was pale and cold, streaked with drifting black dust from the collapsing carnival. The wind cut across the grounds in silent currents, tugging at Rosie's hair, rippling ash across Elle's blistered shoulders. Finally, Rosie spoke, her voice cracked and hollow. "Is it over?" Elle didn't answer. She felt the vibration in her bones, faint but still there, like laughter echoing up from a cave deep below the earth. She turned her dead gaze to the horizon, where the pale sun burned through drifting ash clouds. "No," she whispered. "It's just begun." They left Iron Vale as the sun set behind drifting towers of black dust. The old carnival grounds still smoldered, warped metal beams glowing red in the dying light. Vultures circled high above, silent and watchful. Elle drove without speaking, her burned hands trembling on the wheel. Rosie sat slumped in the passenger seat, staring out at the darkening highway with hollow, unblinking eyes. The smell of burnt flesh and rotting sweetness clung to their clothes, soaked into their hair and skin. Every time Elle inhaled, it rose up her throat like an invisible tide, choking her with memory. They passed a faded green highway sign illuminated in the last beams of dusk, Westland, 102 miles. The cracked phone on the dashboard flickered with half-dead light. Headlines scrolled across its splintered screen: "Another abandoned carnival fire, investigators baffled by tunnels below Ashevale grounds, FBI opens investigation into multi-state carnival cult murders, urban explorers warned against visiting Rotten Mirth sites." Elle read each headline with eyes that felt too dry to blink. Her burned lips curled into a bitter smile. Rotten Mirth. The words echoed in her skull, whispered through with Mr. Silly's layered laughter. Rosie's cracked voice rasped beside her. "Elle, what do we do now?" Elle didn't look at her. The highway unrolled in flickering white lines beneath the dying sun. "Find the next bloom," she whispered. Rosie's sob turned into a laugh. Thin. Cracked. Borderline hysterical. "The next bloom? You think this is a fucking garden, Elle?" Elle's burned hands tightened on the wheel, blood seeping through her cracked blisters. "It is," she said flatly. "A garden of rot. And he's its gardener." Rosie turned to her, tears streaking soot down her face. "We can't kill him. You heard what he said. You can't burn what was never alive." Elle's eyes flicked to the cracked rearview mirror. For a moment, she didn't see Rosie's reflection. She saw herself, staring back with hollow black eye holes, her jaw splitting wider and wider until the skin split up to her ears. Rows of black needle teeth glistened in the fading light. She blinked. The vision was gone. Only her own bloodshot eyes stared back, wide and rimmed with ash. Elle swallowed the sour bile rising in her throat. Her burned voice came out ragged and flat. "If we can't kill him, we starve him." Rosie shook her head violently. "How? How do you starve something that feeds on fear?" Elle didn't answer. The highway twisted through dark pine forests, the trees clawing at the dusk sky like skeletal fingers. Headlights flickered on in the distance, approaching from the opposite direction. As the cars passed, Rosie curled into the passenger seat, pressing her forehead to the window. "I just want to go home," she whispered. "I just want to go home." Elle's blistered lips twisted into a bitter smile. "There's no home anymore." Rosie sobbed quietly, shoulders shaking beneath her soot-streaked shirt. Outside, the forest gave way to wide fields of dying grass, bathed in the last violet glow of dusk. Elle's phone buzzed suddenly on the dashboard. The cracked screen flickered, displaying an email notification: Carnival tunnel maps, Iron Vale and Ashvale connection confirmed. Her chest tightened. She grabbed the phone with trembling fingers, scrolling down the corrupted text. Multiple sealed tunnel systems beneath Carnival grounds connect to ancient native burial cave systems predating colonial settlement. Legends of the Laughing Worm or the Smiling Thing date back centuries before traveling carnivals. Possible cult worship routes through Appalachian foothills. Her vision blurred. Her burned hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Older than the carnivals. Older than people. Rosie's voice cracked beside her. "Elle, what is it?" Elle didn't answer. She dropped the phone back onto the dashboard and forced her eyes back to the road. Ahead, the highway twisted into darkness, lit only by the weak glow of the headlights. He's not just in carnivals. The realization sank through her chest like a blade. He's in the land itself. Blooming wherever people gather. Feeding wherever laughter and fear mingle. Her vision flickered. The trees lining the road shifted, trunks bending at unnatural angles. Between them, shadows moved, hunched clown silhouettes with porcelain masks, each grinning wide enough to split their heads in half. She blinked. The trees returned to stillness. Rosie clutched the dashboard, her voice ragged with fresh panic. "Elle. You're scaring me, please just stop the car, please just stop." Elle pressed the accelerator harder. The engine whined in protest as the car sped down the cracked blacktop. "We can't stop," she whispered. Rosie sobbed. "Why?" Elle's burned lips curled into a snarl. "Because he's everywhere, Rosie. And if we stop, he wins." The road twisted suddenly. Headlights illuminated an old billboard half-collapsed in the roadside ditch. Its paint was peeled away by decades of sun and rain, but faint letters remained: "The Smiling Clown Carnival, Laughter for All." A cartoon clown with a cracked grin stared down at them, half his face lost to black mildew. Rosie screamed, curling into the seat, covering her ears with trembling hands. Elle's chest burned with each ragged breath. Her blistered hands bled onto the wheel as her vision swam. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain and terror and exhaustion, she felt it again. That faint vibration. That soft, patient laugh. It whispered through her mind like warm rot: "Little star, you can't kill what laughs beneath the roots." Tears blurred her vision. She wiped them away with the back of her burned wrist, smearing blood across her cheek. Her voice came out flat, empty, hollowed out by the echo of his laughter. "Then I'll burn the world." The Appalachian foothills rose in jagged dark ridges against the night sky. The moon hung swollen and red above them, casting weak, bloody light across the narrow mountain roads. Fog drifted low over the crumbling asphalt, coiling around the tires as Elle's car rattled up the incline. The cracked phone screen flickered weak GPS directions. Each recalculation whispered the same destination: Iron Vale Burial Caves, restricted historical site. Rosie sat silent in the passenger seat, staring out into the drifting fog. Her hair was matted with blood and ash, plastered to her hollow cheeks. Her hands lay limp in her lap, fingers streaked with dried tears and dirt. Neither of them spoke as the car wound higher into the mountains. The forest pressed close on either side, pine trunks rising like endless skeletal pillars into darkness. Every so often, headlights flicked across faded signs nailed to leaning trees. No trespassing, cave site closed, danger, unstable ground. Elle ignored them. Her burned hands clenched the wheel, blistered skin cracking and bleeding into the leather grip. Her mind felt distant, filled with Mr. Silly's echoing laughter. It hummed up from the earth beneath them, vibrating in her bones like a secret song. At the top of the old logging road, she stopped. The headlights illuminated rusted metal barriers chained across the gravel path. Beyond them, an overgrown trail disappeared into blackness. The trees crowded so close they nearly blocked out the moon. Elle stepped out of the car, poker clutched in her trembling grip. The cool mountain air bit into her burned skin, making her vision sparkle with fresh pain. She staggered to the trunk and wrenched it open. Inside lay the gasoline cans she had filled from the last abandoned service station, their rusted caps still sticky with diesel fumes. Rosie climbed out of the car, her bare feet sinking into damp moss. She shivered in the cold wind, arms wrapped around her thin frame. Her cracked voice rose into the silent forest. Elle, please, don't do this. Elle ignored her. She hefted one can in each blistered hand and began down the overgrown trail. Thorns tore at her jeans, slicing open old burns along her calves. The moon disappeared behind a thick swirl of fog. In the darkness, the laughter whispered louder. Little star, little star. Always chasing the roots, the trail ended at the mouth of a low cave, half hidden behind twisted laurel bushes. Faded warning signs lay collapsed in the mud, their metal poles bent and rusted. Elle crouched and crawled into the cave, dragging the gasoline cans behind her. Rosie whimpered, following on hands and knees, tears dripping silently onto the slick stone floor. Inside, the tunnel widened into a cavernous chamber. Phosphorescent fungi pulsed faint green light across wet limestone walls. Stalactites dripped steady streams of mineral-rich water into black pools scattered across the uneven floor. But Elle saw none of that. Her gaze locked on what lay embedded in the far wall of the cavern. A mass of flesh. Veined and pink, like a giant bloated root bulb. It pulsed with slow, heavy beats, each vibration shivering the thin fungal light across the cave. Clown masks jutted from its surface like cancerous nodules, each painted grin cracked, each hollow eye-hole weeping thick black fluid onto the stone floor. Rows of jagged yellow teeth lined puckered seams between the masks, gnashing and grinding in lazy spasms. The smell pouring from it was thick with sweet rot and sour milk, strong enough to make Rosie gag. Mr. Silly's voice oozed from every mask at once, layered in warped carnival music and wet chuckles. Little star, you've found my route. Elle staggered forward. Her blistered hands trembled around the gasoline cans as she unscrewed the caps. Fumes filled the cavern, mixing with the reek of rotting sugar and fungal decay. Rosie sobbed behind her, pressing her shaking hands to her mouth. Elle, please, please don't, we'll die down here, we'll die. Elle turned her hollow gaze on her. Her burned lips curled into a smile that cracked fresh blood across her chin. That's the point. Mr. Silly's laughter vibrated through the cave walls, dislodging flakes of mineral dust from the ceiling. The masks twisted toward her in unison, teeth grinding faster. Burn yourself, little star, become my brightest candle. Elle poured the gasoline across the pulsing flesh. The liquid streamed down vein channels between masks, soaking into the meaty mass with slurping sounds. Rosie collapsed to her knees, shaking her head violently, tears falling in silent torrents. Please. I want to go home. Please Elle, please. Elle crouched in front of her, burned hands gripping her trembling shoulders. "There is no home, Rosie," she whispered. "There never was." She pressed her forehead to Rosie's, feeling the tears streaking her own ash-caked skin. "He's everywhere. We can't kill him. But we can hurt him. Make him starve." Mr. Silly's laughter rose higher, teeth clacking in manic rhythms. "You can't starve what feeds on your ashes." Elle pulled back and stood, flicking open the half-dead lighter she had carried since Ashvale. Its tiny flame flickered weakly in the damp cave air. She turned to Mr. Silly's pulsing root. The masks gnashed their teeth faster, splitting wider to reveal wet pink tongues writhing with clusters of black eggs. His voice rattled the cavern ceiling, "I will bloom again, little star. I will bloom again through you." Tears blurred Elle's vision as she whispered, "Not this time." She flicked the lighter forward. Flame met gasoline. The cavern erupted into searing orange light. Heat slammed into her, peeling the burned skin from her arms in wet sheets. Rosie screamed behind her as fire raced across the veined flesh, blackening masks in a bubbling wave of melting porcelain. Mr. Silly's laughter turned to a shrill, chittering scream. The entire cave shook as the root mass writhed in agony, vomiting thick clouds of black smoke that clung to the rock walls in clotted streaks. Elle staggered backward, her hair igniting in a bright halo. She felt her knees give way. As the fire consumed her sight, she saw them, rows upon rows of roots, stretching out beyond the cave, plunging down into blackness. Each twisted with masks. Each pulsing with their own blooms waiting to rise. His voice crackled through her skull one last time, high and sweet and infinite, "You can't kill the soil, little star, only water it with your fear." Then the fire swallowed her scream. Rosie woke coughing black smoke from her lungs. Her eyes burned with tears as thick acrid haze curled around her face, stinging every raw scrape along her arms and neck. The cave ceiling was lost in roiling orange light. Flames raced along veined growths embedded in the limestone walls, bubbling their slick pink surfaces into blackened husks. The cavern floor cracked under the heat, releasing sharp reports like bones snapping under a hammer. She tried to scream, but her voice came out a raw rasp. Her ears rang with the echoes of Mr. Silly's dying laughter, high and sweet and layered beneath its own shrieking collapse. Beside her, Elle lay twisted against a shattered stalagmite. Her burned hair had burned away entirely. Blistered skin peeled in curling sheets across her chest and arms. One of her eyes stared glassy and unblinking at the inferno raging across the chamber. Rosie crawled to her, sobbing with each trembling movement. Her knees left streaks of black ash across the stone. She pressed her trembling fingers to Elle's neck, desperate for warmth, for a flutter of pulse beneath burned flesh. "Nothing. Elle," she croaked. "Elle, please, please don't leave me." The fire roared louder, a giant's hungry inhalation tearing oxygen from the cave. Sparks rained across Elle's blistered cheek, curling into her open eye. She didn't blink. Rosie pressed her forehead to Elle's burned chest, sobbing until her lungs rattled with smoke. Her tears streaked down her soot-blackened face, cutting pale trails through the ash. Then, beneath the scream of the flames, she heard it. A giggle. Sweet. High-pitched. Childlike. She lifted her head. Across the burning cavern, Mr. Silly's root mass writhed in death convulsions. The clown masks melted in dripping white streaks, revealing gaping wounds of blackened meat and snapping needle teeth. But from deep within the pulsing mass, the laughter continued, muffled, but clear. Little Blossom, don't cry, laughter is forever," Rosie screamed, a ragged animal shriek that tore her throat raw. She grabbed a chunk of broken stalactite and hurled it at the flaming mass. It struck one of the exposed masks, cracking it apart in a spray of molten porcelain. The laughter only grew louder, echoing up through the cave floor, vibrating the stone beneath her blood-slicked knees. One garden burned, 1,000 seeds remain, flames crawled up the walls, racing along twisted fungal roots embedded in the stone. The heat scorched Rosie's skin in blistering waves. She stumbled backward, choking on the thick black smoke filling her throat with every breath. She turned to Elle, grabbing her burned shoulders, shaking her corpse violently. "Help me," she screamed. "Please. Help me." Elle's head lolled limply, blistered lips parted in a frozen grimace. Her empty eye stared past Rosie into the fire-lit darkness. The laughter rose higher, layered with wet chuckles and rattling carnival calliope music. The cave trembled as the fire roared through branching tunnels, igniting black veins that pulsed deeper into the earth. Rosie stumbled toward the collapsed tunnel entrance, coughing blood into her shaking hands. Her vision flickered with black spots. The flames closed behind her, melting fungal growths into bubbling rivers of reeking slime. She crawled up the slope, her blistered palms slipping on ash-slick stone. Each breath tore new rips in her throat, thick with burning hair and sweet rotting sugar. Mr. Silly's laughter echoed up through the rocks beneath her knees, vibrating her teeth with each note. At the mouth of the cave, dawn broke across the ridges in streaks of blood-red and corpse-pale gold. Fog coiled through black pine trunks like drifting funeral shrouds. Rosie collapsed onto the moss-choked ground outside, gasping ragged lungfuls of cold mountain air. Behind her, the cave mouth belched thick black smoke. The laughter rose with it, twisting into the pale morning sky. She pressed her burned hands over her ears, screaming and screaming until her voice cracked into wet gurgles. But the laughter didn't stop. It seeped up from the rocks beneath her belly, whispered from the twisted roots of the pine trees. It vibrated in her bones, curling around her spine in warm, rotten tendrils. Little blossom, I bloom wherever your fear waters the soil. Rosie sobbed into the moss, tears mingling with black ash. Her mind flickered with visions, carnival tents rising from moonlit clearings, fabric streaked with black mold. Porcelain masks sprouting from rotting tree trunks, grinning wide enough to split their hollow faces in half. Rows of children standing silently in warped funhouse mirrors, their reflections split down the middle to reveal writhing pink meat and snapping black teeth. The morning breeze stirred her soot-caked hair, carrying with it the faint scent of burned sugar. Behind her eyelids, Rosie saw Elle's charred corpse again, slack face split into a black-toothed grin, burned lips whispering the final word she never spoke aloud, "He's never gone." Rosie clawed her fingers into the moss-choked earth, her scream muffled by the cold damp soil. Somewhere beneath her, in the roots and rot and ancient stone, Mr. Silly's laughter whispered, "You can't kill what lives in every shadow, you can only feed me again, and again, and again." The dawn brightened across the ridges. A thin wind scattered black ash through the twisted pines. Rosie curled into a sobbing ball on the forest floor as the shadows lengthened around her. And deep below, in caverns older than bone, the roots pulsed with new life. Waiting. Always waiting. Rosie staggered through the pines as dawn spilled corpse-pale gold across the forest floor. Her burned feet sank into moss and mud with every stumbling step. Fog coiled low around her ankles, clinging with damp chill that seeped into her bones. Ash drifted down from the branches above, settling in her hair like black snowflakes. Behind her, the cave still burned. Smoke curled in heavy plumes from the tunnel mouth, tinted pink by the dawn light. Mr. Silly's laughter no longer roared from its depths, now it whispered, softer, closer. Little blossom, little blossom. She pressed her blistered hands over her ears, sobbing into the fog. The trees pressed close around her, silent sentinels with trunks slicked black by night rains. Pale fungi glowed faintly at their roots, casting sickly green pools of light across the decaying leaves. Every step sent fresh pain lancing up her calves. Her jeans clung stiff with dried blood. Her mind flickered in and out of memory. Elle's burned corpse slumped against the stalagmite, her eyes staring unblinking into flames. Marcus's slack mouth splitting wider and wider to reveal needle teeth curling up into his nasal cavity. Mr. Silly's cracked porcelain mask leaning down to whisper in her ear, "You laughed for me once, laugh again, forever." She stumbled and fell to her knees. The moss felt soft against her raw skin, damp with dew and black ash. She sobbed until her ribs ached, clutching fistfuls of earth to her chest as if it might anchor her in a world that felt less real with every ragged breath. In the silence between her sobs, she heard it. Laughter. Close. Sweet. Childlike. She lifted her head. Ahead, through drifting curtains of fog, a carnival tent loomed between the trees. Its fabric was gray with mildew, sagging between rotting poles. Strips of faded bunting fluttered in the dawn breeze, their once bright colors lost to sun and rain. The scent of burnt sugar drifted from its gaping entrance, mingled with the thick metallic tang of old blood. Rosie's breath hitched in her throat. Her burned lips trembled. No, 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 but her feet moved anyway. She rose and staggered forward, the poker she had taken from Elle's limp hand dragging behind her in the moss, leaving a dark furrow in its wake. The tent's entrance yawned wide, flaps sagging like rotted skin. Inside, flickering lanterns cast pools of sickly yellow light across warped wooden floorboards. Rows of carnival mirrors lined the walls. Each warped glass surface reflected her twisted silhouette in infinite repetitions. Her soot-streaked face. Her hollow eyes. Her lips split and bleeding from screams she could no longer swallow down. In every reflection, he stood behind her. Mr. Silly. His cracked mask leaned down beside her ear, painted grin curling up into hollow black eye holes. His skeletal fingers rested lightly on her shoulders, nails split and curling into fungal growths. His voice whispered from the mirrors in layered echo, "You're mine now, little blossom, you've always been mine." Rosie screamed and swung the poker at the nearest mirror. The glass shattered in a spray of silvered shards, slicing deep into her burned arms and chest. Blood splattered across the warped wood floor in slick red streaks. The mirrors rippled. In the broken fragments, Mr. Silly's reflection multiplied, dozens of masks grinning wide enough to split their heads in half, each revealing writhing pink tongues lined with black egg clusters. She stumbled back, sobbing, clutching her bleeding arms to her chest. "No, please, please just let me go," the mirrors shimmered. In their depths, she saw herself kneeling in a funhouse corridor, her reflection split down the middle to reveal teeth and eyes and black, laughing rot. Mr. Silly's voice oozed from every shard, "Little blossom, there is no leaving, you've bloomed." She fell to her knees. Tears streamed down her soot-blackened face, mingling with blood dripping from her split scalp. She pressed her forehead to the moss-choked floorboards, choking on silent sobs. From the shattered mirrors, laughter rose in a chorus of rattling childlike giggles. She felt it then, deep in her chest. A faint vibration. A warmth curling around her heart. A pulse. Ba-dum. Ba-dum. Her sobs stilled. She pressed her burned hands to her sternum, feeling the heat spreading through her ribcage. Ba-dum. 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 The warmth grew. sweet, heavy with rot and sugar. It spread down her spine in gentle waves. She gasped, her eyes rolling back as the tremors reached her pelvis, her thighs, her toes. In the mirrors, her reflection twitched. Her slack mouth curled upward. Her teeth blackened at the roots, thinning into needle points. Black ichor seeped from her gums, dribbling down her chin. Mr. Silly's cracked mask leaned down beside her in every reflection. His voice was a warm, syrupy purr. "Bloom for me, little blossom, let me wear your smile." She felt her jaw split wider. The tendons along her cheeks popped one by one. Her skin tore back to reveal gums lined with 2 rows of teeth, each sharpened to black points. Her tongue writhed, swelling thick with black eggs embedded along its length. Her eyes rolled forward. Her vision flickered with new sights, tunnels lined with veined pink roots stretching for miles beneath the Appalachians. Carnival blooms rising from cracked asphalt in ghost towns swallowed by vines. Rows of children standing silently in mirror mazes, their reflections split open to reveal gnashing teeth and black eyes laughing without end. The warmth spread up her throat into her brain. She felt herself dissolving in it, her sobs turning to breathless giggles. In the mirrors, Mr. Silly leaned down and pressed his cracked mask to her bloody forehead. His hollow eyeholes stared into her skull. "Smile for me, little blossom." She did. Her mouth split wide enough to crack her jaw in half. Her laughter joined his, echoing through the carnival tent in layered ripples of sugar-sweet rot. Outside, dawn brightened across the pine ridges. Fog coiled through the trunks in drifting funeral veils. Birds fell silent in their nests. And from deep beneath the moss-choked earth, the roots pulsed with new life. Waiting. Always waiting. The sky turned from corpse-pale dawn to bruised gray as fog swallowed the forest. Rosie stumbled through rotting leaves and moss, her burned feet sinking into damp earth with every uneven step. Her hair hung in matted ropes across her blistered face. Tears streaked black ash down her hollow cheeks. Behind her, the ruined carnival tent sagged between twisted pine trunks. Its torn fabric fluttered in the wind like flayed skin. Inside, broken mirrors reflected nothing but darkness. Mr. Silly's laughter echoed softly through the drifting fog, vibrating in Rosie's chest with each ragged breath. Little blossom, keep walking, your garden waits," she sobbed as she walked, unable to stop her trembling legs. Each step carried her deeper into the forest, deeper into the echoing pulse beneath the moss and black soil. Her vision blurred. Shadows shifted between tree trunks, flickering silhouettes of hunched clown figures with masks split wide to reveal gnashing black teeth. She blinked, but they remained, silent sentinels drifting through the drifting fog. The laughter grew louder. Sweet. High-pitched. Childlike. She stumbled into a wide clearing where the fog parted in swirling curtains. At its center, an ancient oak tree rose from the moss-choked earth, its trunk warped into curling bulges of knotted wood. Porcelain clown masks jutted from its bark like fungal growths. Each mask was split down the center, revealing wet pink tissue beneath. Black fluid oozed from their hollow eye holes, dribbling down the trunk into dark pools between gnarled roots. The roots pulsed. Veined and pink, lined with twitching taste buds, they spread across the clearing like cancerous tentacles. Fungal stalks sprouted between them, each capped with a tiny porcelain clown face. Rosie fell to her knees. Tears dripped from her chin onto the moss. Her burned hands curled into trembling fists against the cold ground. Mr. Silly's cracked mask emerged from the tree trunk, sliding forward as if birthed from rotting wood. His hollow black eye holes stared into her skull. His voice oozed into her ears in a thick, syrupy whisper. "You've come home, little blossom," she sobbed, shaking her head violently, hair whipping across her face. "Please, please let me go, please, I just want to go home, mister." Silly's grin widened, splitting his porcelain mask from chin to brow. Pink flesh pulsed beneath the cracked ceramic. Rows of black needle teeth gnawed gently at the edges of his gaping mouth. "You are home." Rosie screamed as his long, skeletal arms emerged from the tree, branching into twisted root-like tendrils. They coiled around her arms and legs, lifting her from the moss-choked earth. Her burned feet dangled inches above the rotting roots. The masks embedded in the tree turned toward her in unison, hollow eyes weeping black ichor. Mr. Silly leaned forward, his cracked mask brushing her tear-streaked cheek. "Do you want to know what I am, little blossom?" She whimpered, eyes squeezed shut. His laughter rolled through the roots beneath them, vibrating her bones until her teeth rattled in her skull. "I am the smile beneath the roots, the laughter buried in stone, the hunger that blooms when fear waters the soil." He pressed his mask to her forehead. The ceramic was ice-cold. His voice was a breathless giggle. "Before clowns, before carnivals, before words. I was here. Laughing in the dark. Feeding on the warmth behind trembling eyes." The tree pulsed behind him. The masks split wider, each revealing writhing pink tongues lined with black eggs. Fungal stalks trembled as they sprouted new clown faces, each splitting open with tiny childlike giggles. Rosie screamed as the tendrils wrapped around her torso, tightening until her ribs cracked. Pain exploded through her chest in jagged white streaks. Mr. Silly's hollow eyes stared into hers, unblinking. "You are my garden now." The tendrils plunged into her chest. Her scream cut off in a choked gasp as the roots split her flesh, curling around her lungs, her heart, her spine. Hot wetness spilled down her belly as the roots threaded through her intestines. Her vision flickered white with agony. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mingling with blood dripping from her open mouth. "Bloom for me." The roots pulsed. The warmth spread up her throat into her brain, filling her skull with sickly sweet light. Her jaw unhinged, splitting wide enough to crack her cheekbones. Needle teeth erupted from her gums, pushing her human teeth out in shattering sprays of blood and bone. Her eyes rolled back as black ichor poured from her tear ducts, streaking down her temples in rotting rivulets. Her tongue swelled thick with writhing black eggs embedded along its length. Mr. Silly's laughter rose in a deafening chorus, echoed by the masks embedded in the tree. The fungal clown faces split open in unison, releasing clouds of black spores that drifted through the fog, curling around her trembling body. Her spine cracked as her limbs twisted, joints reversing with sharp pops. Her chest caved inward, then bulged outward as roots filled the space behind her ribs. She felt herself dissolving in him, her mind fracturing into flickering images of funhouse mirrors, carnival tents rising from moonlit clearings, children's screams echoing from underground tunnels lined with teeth. The last of her thoughts curled around a single realization: Elle was wrong. There is no burning him out. Only feeding him. She tried to scream again, but her voice came out as bubbling laughter. Mr. Silly's cracked mask split fully apart, revealing the pulsing root mass behind it. Rows of gaping mouths lined the veined pink bulb, each filled with grinding black teeth. The laughter rolled from them in waves, rattling the forest floor, shaking loose rotting pine needles in drifting clouds. Rosie's vision blurred as her eyes split into black voids lined with tiny, writhing white worms. Mr. Silly's voice whispered through her splintering skull, "Smile for me, little blossom," and she did. The forest was silent except for the whisper of drifting fog through black pine trunks. Ash fell from the pale dawn sky, settling on rotting needles like soot from some distant funeral pyre. At the center of the clearing, Rosie hung suspended in the gnarled roots of the ancient oak. Her body no longer moved with breath. The tendrils had hollowed her out from within, replacing bone and meat with veined pink roots lined with twitching taste buds. Her burned lips were gone, split wide to her ears. Her jaw dangled slack, revealing gums lined with rows of needle teeth. From her torn throat bubbled a faint, high-pitched giggle. It rose in wet rattling pulses, echoing from her hollowed chest in rhythms that matched the tree's pulsing roots. Mr. Silly's cracked porcelain mask leaned down beside her slack face, grinning with a mouth split open to reveal gnashing black teeth embedded in pink, writhing flesh. His hollow black eye-holes gazed into her empty sockets. His voice rippled through the roots vibrating around them, "Such a beautiful bloom, little blossom, such a beautiful smile." The fungal clown faces sprouting from the tree trunk giggled in unison, splitting open to release drifting clouds of black spores. The spores coiled through the clearing, curling around Rosie's slack limbs, seeding themselves into the gaping wounds lining her arms and chest. The forest floor trembled. Beneath the moss and rotting needles, the roots spread outward in pulsing networks, each lined with masks. Their hollow eyes wept thin streams of black fluid into the earth. Far below, deeper than stone, the cavernous root mass pulsed in darkness. Veins thicker than train tunnels split and branched in all directions, feeding countless blooms spread across the continent, funhouses rotting in abandoned fairgrounds. Mirror mazes warped by mold and crawling with silent shadows. Ferris wheels frozen against the sky like snapped vertebrae. Each bloom whispered with childlike giggles that rippled up through the soil, vibrating the trees, the asphalt, the cracked concrete of forgotten highways. And above them all, in the drifting dawn fog, Rosie's hollow laughter joined the chorus. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away a rusted carnival sign swung in the humid breeze, its chains creaking softly. Flies swarmed around a tattered banner fluttering beneath. The smiling clown carnival, laughter for all ages. The carnival grounds lay silent. Overgrown midway paths snaked between crumbling rides choked in kudzu. Faded clown faces peeled from rotting plywood booths. The funhouse entrance yawned wide, its painted grin split down the center by age and rot. Inside, mirrors warped by decades of mildew reflected empty corridors. Dust drifted through beams of gray dawn light filtering between collapsed planks. Rats scurried along damp carpet strips, gnawing at old straw. In the deepest chamber, beyond warped mirrors and sagging clown cutouts, a trap door lay half-hidden beneath fallen beams. Its rusted hinges strained as it shivered with faint vibrations rising from below. Then, a giggle. High. Sweet. Childlike. The trap door split down the center. Veined pink roots pushed up through the rotting wood, splitting it apart in silence. Each root was lined with puckered mouths, black needle teeth gnashing gently in rhythmic hunger. Porcelain clown masks bloomed from the roots like fungal nodules. Their hollow eyes opened to darkness as black fluid wept from their corners. Mr. Silly's voice whispered up through the roots, "Little star, little blossom, bloom for me again." Outside, dawn brightened across the rust-choked rides. Fog drifted low over the cracked asphalt, curling around peeling painted horses and sagging tilt-a-whirl cars. A faint breeze stirred the banner again. Its sun-bleached letters flapped with each movement, laughter for all ages, and from beneath the ground, deeper than bone and older than names, laughter rose in gentle waves. Waiting. Always waiting. Somewhere far away, Deep in black tunnels lined with gnashing teeth, Elle's burned corpse twitched once. Her cracked lips split open in a final silent smile. And beneath her blistered ribcage, something giggled.